flagship program known as Partnership for Risk and Resilience. For some reason, I don't know what triggered this, Marius and I were in the Eastern Cape together, and we traveled together from an event at the Provincial Cooperative Governance Department to the airport. And when we got to the airport, he then mentioned that he needed someone to facilitate this particular program, and that he was requesting me to do so. So I still don't know whether he thought I was capable, or whether, because I had actually given him a lift to the airport, so maybe he thought, no, let me give something to do in return. But I was happy because I've always been part of the Infires Seminar, even previously during my time when I worked for the National Disaster Management Center. I would always be part of this particular event every year, either as a participant or as somebody who would share thoughts in terms of what we were doing at the time from the side of government. So I'm happy that we are back once again today on the 4th of June to reflect on issues around firefighting water supply. And I've looked at the program. I think there's a lot of good speakers and good content and substantive content that would be able to go through. We know that water supply is increasingly becoming a challenge due to a number of reasons that we are hoping that when the speakers identify some of these issues, they will also be able to identify some of the proposals that they think we should consider to tackle the problem, because it's not enough to know that there's a problem. I think we need to ask ourselves, what is that we need to do about it? I see that Dr. Titi is here, Dr. Tanya Terreblanche from the city of Tshwane, which is the fire department that I also spent many years of my early career as a fire practitioner there. We're hoping that whatever comes out, Dr. Titi, you guys are able to go back to the city and start institutionalizing and tweaking and adjusting to make sure that fire protection doesn't get compromised due to inadequate water supply, inadequate water pressure, dysfunctional fire hydrants. There's a lot we can talk about, and hopefully as we evolve the conversation, we'll be able to pick up on a number of issues. But my job today is not to make a long speech, and I'm happy about that. It is to essentially facilitate and get the conversation going. And the first person that will speak is Richard. Richard Eustace. You know Richard very well. Richard works for Old Mutual Insurance. He's also the chairman of the FPA SA board, and he's the head specialty risk engineering at Old Mutual. Richard and I, Old Mutual Insurance, I must say, Richard and I have met on a number of occasions virtually. It is interesting that it's only today initiatives. So Richard will then come and convey the welcoming and opening. We're hoping that those that are outside will also be settling in. Richard?
I think they think I'm a giraffe. Honored guests, speakers, board members, officers, delegates, all protocols observed. Good morning and welcome. A very special welcome to Deanne Bezuidenhout from Hollard, our renewed stakeholder board member. And I would like to express an open invitation to interested parties in becoming stakeholder members and for joining as corporates and individual members. Also, a very special thanks to the FPASA team for organizing such an auspicious occasion. The theme, firefighting, water supplies. In terms of Section 27(1)(b) of the Constitution, everybody has the right of access to sufficient water. As you're aware, this is not the case. The basic needs are not being provided for, and the provision of fire water is cascaded down the list of priorities. This poses a great challenge to insurers, fire services, industry and commerce, and to citizens. A document passed my desk the other day, and I have the solution. The only problem is it's going to cost trillions of rands, and Donald Trump has made it quite clear that he's not going to support us. So we have the option of desalinating mine and seawater. We can treat and reclaim wastewater. We can import water from the mighty rivers in Africa, such as the Congo River or the Zambezi River. Something that I found quite interesting was we can just float an iceberg here from Antarctica, and we'll have a large supply of potable water. More intense groundwater utilization with deeper aquifers, more intense conservation of water, and more stringent measures to prevent leakage and wastage, rainwater harvesting, and then fog and dew harvesting. Unfortunately, my solutions are at this stage imperceptible. So it's unlikely that they will ever come to pass. Learnings. Thank you very much.
He was going to be very brief. I think he has stayed true to his commitment. We appreciate that, Richard. We hoping that now you feel more welcomed. Traditionally, after the welcome, you're supposed to take off your jackets, but because it's winter, we would understand that you would not be doing that. We have a speaker from SALGA. SALGA is the South African Local Government Association, who is going to talk to us about, the topic is entitled Fire Service Upliftment. Her name is Grace. She's here. She's an advisor, climate change and resilience. I've also seen a bio here, which I would quickly highlight a thing or two there, Grace. 10 years within the SALGA space, the South African Local Government Association, providing support through implementation of city sustainability support program to fire services, coordinating rollout of local government peer learning and knowledge sharing, developing guidelines and supporting municipalities to access grants such as the municipal infrastructure grants, engaging municipalities to include fire service in integrated development plans, which we just call IDPs, setting up PPPs, private partnerships, arrangements, and conducting training essentially for municipalities. In terms of qualification, she holds an MSc in Disaster Risk Management and Climate Governance from the University of Catholic de Murcia in Spain. So we have Grace Matsiwa coming through. I'm hoping that her presentation is ready. She has, let's just confirm her time. And Marius, in terms of your preference, you will want us to deal with a question or two immediately after Grace?
If time allows, yes. Otherwise, we do have
the question and yes. Yeah, we obviously don't want to do what gets done by politicians, because when I worked in local government and we will go to IDP conversations, and when politicians know that you're going to ask difficult questions, they allow you to ask at the end, and then there's 30 questions, but they can choose which ones to respond to. But if you want to get them into a corner, ask them a question one-on-one. So you ask one question, they respond. Then you ask the next one. They don't want that. They'll tell you, no, take all of them. Then they can pick up and emphasize the easier ones and skip the difficult ones. So Grace has 30 minutes.
Hello, Grace. Forward.
Thanks very much, Program Director. And good morning to all the speakers and the delegates this morning. I'd like you to take you through the presentation that I made that talks to focusing much on the part of the municipalities at large in the country. Before I can go to this introduction, I would like to also come quickly in terms of SALGA assisting municipalities, because most of ourselves, we don't know what SALGA is doing in municipalities. SALGA has a mandate where it stands as an advisor to municipalities, providing support to municipalities in terms of their project and programs, and again represent and promote, and in the interest of local government, SALGA is always there with municipalities. So coming to the introduction, I would like to say SALGA in this seminar is very much providing support to the seminar in terms of the seminar serving as a platform for discussion, innovative approaches, and to mitigate fire-related risks. And this event, when we gather here, we are looking at the industry's experts and policymakers and key stakeholders to share insights and strategies aimed at reducing the impact of fire in our communities through municipalities, because communities are in the hands of local municipalities as the service providers to the communities. So the importance of fire impact reduction, the fire incident can have a devastating effect, as you all know, that it is a very key platform where we have to make sure that communities are in the safe hands. And on both lives and properties, the role of insurance is, in this context, very much key, in a sense that as they not only provide financial support, they also come on board and assisting the communities and other stakeholders such as departments, even the traditional leaders, more especially in the rural areas, to make sure that they understand their way of dealing with these fire hazards, in terms of coming to support them with the ways of preventing fires and coming up with the safety measures in that regard. Here coming to the impact of strategy in terms of transportation, we all know that when we are driving on the roads, our vehicle tends to have an accident where we seeing ourselves, the vehicle being igniting fire. In those instances, we are likely to understand how to save and prevent the fire from those lives that are in that car and even losing the property. So it's where the insurance should be coming on board and assist in that regard, because the car is also get to be insured. So the strategy involves the research, project, and representation to improve the safety and minimize the impact of those fire incidences. And it is a framework used by insurers to reduce the impact of fire on insured properties, such as freight logistics, abnormal loads and vehicles with heavy loads, and more especially those who are having the hazmat materials. And we urge to municipalities that a lot of vehicles that on the road, they should have the stickers showing what is it that is in that vehicles, that shows that it is a dangerous goods inside, or a material that is gonna make a havoc in terms of fire. So an insurer fire impact reduction strategy on transportation aims to mitigate the risks and financial impact of fire incidents involving vehicles, including passengers and cargo transportation. In most of the case, when I was using a public transport such as taxis, they used to take our names to ensure that we are, if ever an accident comes on board and happening on that spot, they know who was in that transport, because you find yourself being very much injured in a sense that they won't even recognize you there. And coming to the picture of saying we are talking about fire, you might be banned in such a way that you cannot be recognizable. So it is just like that, to ensure that you enlist your names and being recognized as such, so that they can know who was there, and even the insurance of that vehicle, they should be understanding who was in that public transport. This strategy typically involves combination of proactive risk management measures, enhance fire safety technologies, and ensure products in that offer coverage for fire-related damages. Here, looking at the wildfire mitigations, we all know that fell fires, if ever I can call it in that manner, we being caused by high temperatures, global changes of the climate change, and secret bats and stuff like that. If ever I can just go through them, I can name many of them that causes fire. And some, it is a human-made causes, like going there and burn some other stuff at the forests. That makes the fell fires to be ignited. But in most cases, we see fire comes in a way alien species that are there to be contributed in that reliability and availability of water resources for firefighting. Because when you do partnerships, sometimes you come on board as municipalities around South Africa. We are urging the municipalities to partner or make MOUs with other key stakeholders, so that they can have enough resources to cap these fire hazards. Then in this work to influence building codes and standards to incorporate better fire safety measures, requiring fire resistance materials in new construction and retrofitting existing buildings to meet higher standards if in a crucial manner. Then supporting vegetation management programs such as the ecosystems where you find the vegetation can be altered in terms of this fire hazard that will be happening as one of the hazard issues. So I have few case studies. I just briefly came into these few case studies, not into detail, based on the fact that we had an incident at KZN where we find there was a massive fire happened that also caused the death of firefighters, other individuals, as the destruction of livestock and large areas of land. And even the livestock there, it was impacted on that incident. We had another one at Cape Town, including the Table Mountain, have led to evacuations and destructions of homes. It's how I just make it so brief to say we have a lot of case studies. There are not only 5, there are many. I just only single out a few and give them a brief on them because we cannot come on board and discuss a lot about them. We are going to spend a lot of time. 30 minutes, it will be a minimum minutes that I'm given. So coming to Capricorn District Municipality, we found ourselves in Limpopo having a very frustrating event that lead us to get into damage caused by wildfires, including destruction of communities, the farms, the livelihood, with economic loss of exceeding 2 billion rands. Where you find that your farms are also burning, it needs you to get insured so that you are very much safe in those instances. Then coming again to the South Cape National Local Municipality, there was a devastating wildfire in 2017, caused significant loss of life, destruction of structures and damaged infrastructure, with thousands of people being evacuated in that area. So in these case studies, I would like to say this, all of them, if ever you can look at them, they caused by climate change. And in this regard, climate change, which also seeks to be including alien invasive species that we are having in our country. So as a climate change person, I also spoke to the Department of Agriculture, SANBI and other key stakeholders to come on board and identify all those alien species so that we can just try to remove them and replace them with the indigenous species. Then factors contributing to wildfires, as I've already indicated, that climate change is one of them. Human activities, I've already spoke about it. And then vegetation and fuel, and impact of ecosystems and air quality, because when you get to that fire, you find that the smokes that you are inhaling is full of air pollution, and it's gonna be impacting your life as well. Then we go to the destruction of vegetation. It is one of the other listed factors that can lead to loss of extensive areas and coming to affect biodiversity and ecosystem services. Then going to adopt proactive measures that enhance, in this slide, it shows that the enhanced community resilience against fire insurers should adopt proactive measures like incentivizing fire resistance construction, offer tailored insurance product, collaborating with communities to promote
preparedness and mitigation strategies. The proactive approach can reduce the impact of wildfires, lower insurance costs, and build stronger, more resilient communities. We understand that we don't advertise insurances, but we do urge to municipalities that it is best for you as a municipality to encourage even the communities to insure their properties. So by implementing preventative measures like vegetation management and home hardening, and developing robust wildfire mitigation and crisis response plans, communities can minimize damage and improve their ability to withstand future fires. Like when we are in the communities or municipalities, we are conducting the awareness campaigns that is focusing much on the fire services and encouraging municipalities, more especially in the side of communities, and traditional leaders should be part of those communities so that they can understand the fire services program and the fire services fraternity and how it can cause more damage in their areas. Because if ever you can just check in our country, we have a lot of rural areas more than urban areas, where you find ourselves that we have the traditional leaders that should be taking part in our awareness campaigns, more especially where I coming from, because I'm from Limpopo. Limpopo is 90 and more percent of rural, and those rural areas, they have traditional leaders, where we need to also include them when we do the awareness campaigns. So these the last one, the last bullet talks to the proactive risk management can encourage relationship between the local governments, community organization, insurance providers, as such. In conclusion, we are looking at the ways of which we need to have the community engagement, as I've already said. We need to ensure that they have a voice in whatsoever they are coming across, because they are the victims of many things that are happening in their areas. And to add on that, we are finding that most of the fire stations are away from the communities in such a way that when the incident happens, they take long to approach the communities due to the fact that it is very far. So as SALGA, we urge to municipalities to say it's better for other municipalities to have satellite stations next to the communities, where they can also able to be there and respond quickly to the incident that might happen. So another issue, it is of that one of water scarcity. We are of water scarcity, and SALGA tried to advise municipalities to have water tankers and ready being available for each and every incident that might happen. So education and awareness is still part of the awareness that I've already set. And then there should be innovative technologies. These ones in most rural areas, they will be having a challenge for them to have them, but it is better to make them to be understanding that there are technologies that you can use them in terms of when you find ourselves in a vulnerable situation because of the fire hazards. So data analytics is one of those things that are coming up. Leveraging data analytics helps insurers to identify high-risk areas and predict potential fire incidents. just go and apply for the insurance package or whatsoever. They are differently being handled and being going to be demonstrated to municipalities so that they can understand how they get insured, as much as their pros and cons will be leading them to get insured for their properties, more especially the municipal infrastructure, where they can get loss of everything without being compensated. So the insurance is going to play a very big role in that instances, and ensure that things are going in the safe hands and being restored as such. Because when you leave, you lost the whole livestock, you lost your wealth, you lost whatsoever you are having, and then you cannot restore or recover from the loss that you have unless you have an insurance. Is what we are busy trying to advocate when we go to awarenesses in the vulnerable communities. Thank you very much.
Let's take Kennedy and then we'll take questions. So we're urging you to note your questions, and then after taking Kennedy, we then have a 5-minute time to reflect. I've also noted a few things that we can pick up. Kennedy is no stranger to this space. We all know him. Hopefully, most of us know him. He's defined Marius that is seasoned professional, and seasoned professional, 14 years experience, numerous various roles within the fire department, consulting and compliance and fire protection spaces. Currently with FPASA, holding a BTEC in fire technology from TUT. He's going to talk about SANS 10090. So let's hear him out, and then we'll engage him and Grace after, just before we go to tea. Kennedy.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much, Doc. As mentioned, my name is Kennedy Safadi, and I'm with FPASA as the head of Fire Protection Projects Division. And today I will discuss SANS 10090, which is a standard for community protection against fire. And to all of us who are no strangers to the constitution of the country, which was promulgated in 1996, I'd like to point out that in Chapter 7 of the Constitution, under Section 156, Powers and Function of Municipalities, that's where the establishment of the fire department comes in. That's the reason why municipalities have a fire department and the province and national does not have. And Part B of that mentions a list of services that are provided and are a function of municipalities. And with that, I'd like to highlight this, which is the legislative framework behind all our standards, acts, and regulations that we use as a country. And one states that a legislative framework is a set of laws, regulations, and principles that guide how government and organizations operate. A legislative act is a decision made by law-making bodies such as Parliament to create a law. Are also known as legislative or statutes or acts. Three, which I'd like to note of. Standard refers to a level of quality or achievement considered acceptable across a whole country, established by a national organization and published for public use, essentially acting as a benchmark for consistency in a specific field like education, healthcare, or product manufacturing. Within a nation, it sets a minimum expectations for quality or performance across different regions or providers within the country. And lastly, a bylaw is a set of rules that a community or organization creates to regulate itself. Bylaw are made by local government and are similar to legislation made by national and provincial government. And I I'm highlighting this legislative framework because earlier on, and in many of our engagements as FPASA, we have what we normally call FPASA webinars, which happen every month, and those are informative sessions. A lot of professional fields have continuous professional development, and the fire department lacks such, and we try to cover that space. And there's quite a number of confusion between enforceable standards and non-enforceable standards. Since 10090 is not an enforceable standard unless adopted by a local authority to its bylaws, then by that virtue it becomes an enforceable standard. But automatically it's not. It's unlike Sense 10400, which is enforceable by building regulations. And in the making of Sense 10090, a number of standards were used to come up with the standard itself. And these are NFPA 291, the recommended practice for fire flow testing and marking of hydrants, NFPA 1201, standard for providing fire and emergency services to the public, NFPA 1500, standard for fire department occupational safety, health and wellness program, NFPA 1561, standard for emergency services incident management system and command safety, NFPA 1710, standard for organization and deployment of fire separation operations, emergency medical operations and special operations to the public by career fire department. NFPA 1901, standard for automatic fire apparatus, Sense 10400 Part A, the application of the National Building Regulations, and Sense 10400 Part T, the application for National Building Regulations. And within Sense 10090, the risk is categorized in 5 categories, which is from A to E. A being central business districts, an extensive commercial and industrial area, normally found in cities, large towns, areas where the risk to life and property due to fire occurs and spread is likely to be high. And category B, which is your limited central business districts, smaller commercial or industrial areas, normally associated with small towns and decentralized areas of cities and large towns, areas where risk to life and property due to fire occurrence and spread of fire is likely to be moderate. And category C would be your residential areas of conventional construction. Category D would be your rural areas of limited building and remote from urban areas. And category E, which is your special risks. And the difference between Sense 10400 categorization and NFPA 1710 2020 edition is that NFPA 1710 uses 3 categories, which is light hazard, medium hazard, and high hazard. And this is normally what's used in a lot of standard for practices in different industries. It's either light hazard, medium hazard, or high hazard. So Sense 10090 categorization is normally not regarded in categorization of risks. And category A lists all. This is a classification of fire brigade services, which has fire brigade classification has 5 categories. Category 5 down to category 1. And the category 5A fire brigade service has the following minimum added appliances. 1, they have a risk profile of an area of jurisdiction. 2, weight and speed of response. 3, call receipt and processing requirements. 4, vehicle and equipment availability and maintenance. 5, incident management procedure. 6, pre-fire planning and risk visits. 7, the training of its personnel. 8, water supply, and 9, a fire safety function. And category 5 still, which is category B, a brigade is able to meet performance criteria for staff availability per appliance, availability predetermined attendance, which is the PDA, manning level, attendance, and attendance time 35 to 45% of the time measured annually. Category 4, a fire brigade, as given in category 5A, as mentioned by relevant performance indicators or statistics, or both, which is able to meet performance criteria for category 5B 46 to 55% of the time measured annually. And category 3, a brigade is given for category 5A, monitored by relevant performance indicators or statistics or both, and which is able to meet performance criteria as given by category 5B 56 to 65% of the time, and also that is measured annually. And category 2, a brigade is given for category 5A, as mentioned by relevant performance indicators or statistics or both, able to meet the performance criteria as given by category 5B 66 to 75% of the time, and that is also measured annually. Category 1, a brigade is given for category 5A, as monitored by relevant performance indicators or statistics or both, and which is also measured annually. For category 5B, meets 75%, meets 75% of the time plus annually. So we have a measuring device, a measuring tool that we came up with as FPASA with the assistance of SAIA, our partner, the South African Insurance Association, which is this tool that we use to measure all the services in the country. And throughout last year and sometime earlier this year, we traveled to more than 155 services, measuring their service level performance from category 5B to category 1. And for the rest category A to E, weight and response, these are the number of appliances that at a minimum level each category is supposed to have, the manning level, and the pumping capacity. So category 1 would be needed at a minimum level to have 2 pumping units, and that would be manned by 5 people. And I will not go into the pumping capacity. My learned colleague, Mr. Okazen, will be talking to fire pressures and flow rates. And this is the attendance time of, with regards to SENS 10090, as acceptable practice would be for category 1, a minimum 10-out time would be 3 minutes, and appliance travel time would be 5 minutes, and the maximum attendance time would be 8 minutes. Going down to category E, which is a special requirement, which has its own, as a special category, a predetermined time would be set for that attendance time. So now we as a country have a problem with attendance time, either from call receipt and to turning out of a fire service, either by the challenge of them not having proper equipment or staffing at that time. And one thing that assists the country and most fire services in not making SENS 100 a mandatory enforceable standard is that should this be an enforceable standard, this country would be litigated left, right, and center. Because now a lot of people would make malicious calls and expecting the fire service to meet up to this time, and if that does not happen, that opens a can of worms. And according to NFPA 1710, the standard for NFPA 1710 states that a 10-out time for category A for them, which would be light hazard, is 80 seconds or less. And the fire engine should arrive on scene within 240 seconds, which is 4 minutes. And the second company, which is a backup, should arrive within 360 seconds maximum, that's 6 minutes. And the low and medium hazard initial full alarm, from full alarm initiation, it should be within 48 seconds, that's a maximum of 8 minutes to arrive time. And a high hazard or high rise area, from upon initiation of alarm, it should be a maximum of 610 seconds, and that is 10 minutes and 10 seconds. So this is the difference between SENS 10090 and NFPA 1710, which is our direct translation of the NFPA standard. And before a call is actually even taken to, or the dispatcher makes a dispatch into a fire service or a station, this is the maximum allowable time for them to, the allowable number of lines that they have for the population that they serve, using the maximum times that were given by the previous slides. And for a population of up to 40,000 people, a service must have one dedicated emergency line. And from 4,001 to 125,000 people, a service must have 2 lines, and from 125,001 to 300,000 people, a service must have a minimum of 3 lines, and from 300,000 and above, a minimum of 4 lines. And with each and every equipment, vehicle, or appliances that is used, there has to be a replacement period, which is part of the maintenance guide of every service. And according to SENS 10090, an appliance that is a pumping appliance has to be in service for a maximum of 15 years. An aerial appliance must have a maximum of 20 years in service, and off-road vehicles a maximum of 10 years. Special vehicles, which should be mostly your hazmat vehicles, should be in service for 20 years, and light motor vehicles should be in service for a maximum of 8 years. And with the theme of today, firefighting, water supply. With water supply, the following should be taken into consideration when doing an assessment for water supply in a potential area. Number 1, the quantities available. So that is your tank or your council supply. How much can your council supply you within a space of an hour, at what pressure, and at what rate? I know one municipality has declared this, which was eThekwini. Last year they were supplying a pressure of 250 kPa. They were not giving you anything above that, and they had also made that public. And B, your source of supply, where you're getting your water. C, your minimum residual pressure. So low-lying areas and high-rise areas have a different residual pressures at different time, depending on the peak period. Reticulation components, including pumps, filters, and piping system. And E, the type, size, distribution, and availability of hydrants. And minimum fire flow. So with your risk categorization, A, B, and C, that's standard, and D, which is what I'd like to talk about, D1 to D4. So D would be your dwellings, your house dwellings, and the difference between the category D1 to D4 is the spacing in between the dwellings. And from 10400 part T, the rule of thumb for this is 1,200 liters at 300 kPa, but Mr. Okezen is going to delve deeper into the difference in flows and appliances and pipe sizing. And this is what his presentation will also touch on with regards to the calculation of the fire flow that is required for a risk category. And according to the Red Book, provision of firefighting water, which is found under Section J 4.5.8, it states that from a high risk, you need a minimum of 100 liters per second, and the spacing between the minimum flow per hydrant is 25 liters per second, and the minimum pressure also is stated there, and you also get your residual pressure. And also that's your fire flow that you'll be getting. And we discussed just today with Mr. Okezen, and a lot of his presentation will be touching on this, hence I will not dwell into this. And that is the end of my presentation for today. Thank you.
No, thanks. I think let's take questions, colleagues, for Kennedy and Grace. Any questions, any submissions or additions for Kennedy? We cannot get a question. It can't be correct. Okay, so we're noting you, Etienne. You must indicate who the question is for, whether it's for Grace or for Kennedy, and then you introduce yourself. So let's start with you, Etienne, from the Western Cape.
Thank you. I don't think it's a question. I think it's more a comment on both presentations. And I would like to start off one of the limitations that prevents the implementation of a mandatory standard is the fact that fire service is not classed as essential or as a basic service. So that is one of the contributing factors. And that is where SALGA can play a big role in the influencing, the declaration of fire service as a basic service. It is classed as an essential service. But once it is classed as a basic service, funding to become a mandatory standard will become available, then the conditional grants in terms of the Division of Revenue Act can be unbundled and ring-fenced for fire services. That is one of the major funding issues with fire services. Coming back to the code is, unfortunately, it's based on the old British standard, and it's outdated. It does not take cognizance of new technologies. And why I say that is, if you look at flow rates, we're not looking at the efficiencies of water. We're looking at pure flow rates under normal volume. But if we look at new development additives, firefighting type A foams, ultra high pressure systems, you don't need those flow rates to achieve what you need to. So the appeal is to, for this code to be reviewed, fire services to be, and Selga, that's why I say it's more a remark to both presenters. There has to be an absolute effort to classify fire services as a basic service, and then it can become a mandatory standard. We cannot not have a standard for fire services. We have a standard for EMS, which talks to the response times for ambulances. How long an ambulance must take to reach an emergency scene. It's no different with fire services. We're playing with lives. So there must be a mandatory standard. We cannot not have a standard because for the fear of litigation. It's absolutely not acceptable. And also when we look at especially rural areas, your category D, water supplies, there should be a different formula. We should rather consider a formula based on hectares that should be available in tanked water instead of flow water. We know for a fact in most category D areas, which is rural, you do not have water supplies or reticulation systems. So the measurement should be the number of, based again on the type of risk, but it should be the number of liters available in tankers for that specific service. So I'll submit. Thank you.
No, thanks for that submission. Anyone who wants to build on that, it's not a question. I'm hearing it to be an input, and I can make my own inputs as well. Maybe just building on what Etienne is saying. So it means that from an advocacy point, Grace, in your narrative as Salga, these are issues that you need to surface. That fire services, in conversation with Treasury, should become a basic service, move beyond essential, because it has been essential since, but Etienne is submitting, and I think this is a conversation that has been part of the national discourse for many years, that it should be, attempts should be made to make it a basic service so that the funding arrangements can be improved. Because yes, you spoke about litigation because of the resource gaps that are there. But if it becomes a funding service and it's funded appropriately, I think it could change the game as well. And one of the other issues that I just want to highlight relates to funding model. Because currently, if you look at how fire services are funded, there's no explicit, clear model from a national government point of view that articulates how the service is funded. And those are the conversations that should be picked up and sustained, because it's currently funded using, that community service component of the local government equitable share, but it is not ring-fenced, meaning that if that community service component of the local government equitable share goes to a municipality will have discretion around what to fund on what. And because it is not a trading service, it doesn't bring money into the municipality, it tends to be less prioritized. And these are things that we need to pick up in those conversations to make sure that going forward, the fire services could be funded in a much more explicit, much more clearer way that takes into account the capital intensity nature of the service. So I thought that I should highlight that. And then you spoke about, Kennedy, you spoke about standards. And you spoke about enforceability versus non-enforceability. And I think it relates to a certain extent to the point that Etienne is saying. But we do know that others, I think there's one metro that had adopted SANS 10090 as a yes, into their bylaws. So those are other low-hanging opportunities that we could encourage cities that are able to adopt to do. So I also thought that, Marius, you may need to, the categorized registration, I thought it was complex. Maybe going forward, you may want to simplify it. I mean, I can see there's 5A, then there's a portion of this that I think you need to think about simplifying it so that people should relate to it, and a person should look at it and feel this is where I am, without having to look at the certain percentage of this in order to get to that. I do think that, and I'm making it as a challenge to you guys to say simplify so that when you have conversation with funders, it should be easy. People should be able to connect and understand this is where you're sitting and this is where you need to go to, you know. So I thought that that's something that we can look at. And my last point relates to the point that you raise around the time, the emergency, over 40,000 must have so many dedicated lines and so on. And I know, Dr. Titi, these are issues around the single emergency number. Those conversation or single emergency platform should not be lost. Because if a person is going to call 10-111 and the police station send out a van to go and check if there's a fire, and when they have checked, having driven for 5-10 minutes and come back and say there's a fire, then they call the fire department. It undermines all these other efforts that are being made. I know the city of Tshwane had a single emergency number of their own, but my challenge, and I know it's not easy, these are not easy issues, but I'm saying wherever you meet Marius in these platforms, raise these issues. Don't let them fall completely, because there were conversations around a single emergency number. Exactly. So let's look at good practices, and let's if cities or regions are able to pick it up at the regional level, let them do so. But we cannot have a single emergency number and have police sending out a police van to go check if there's a smoke, and then they come back and say no. Then they start calling the fire department. And when they arrive, people are actually very angry with them because they don't know that they weren't the first people to receive the call. And firefighters are chased away and so on and so forth. I just thought that I should highlight those issues, seeing that there were no other comments. Can we see if there are additional comments? We still have 7 minutes before the tea break. Marius?
Thank you, Doctor. Just a quick addition about the SANS 10090. It is very definitely very old. I mean, just the issue around the lines. That was written in the time where you didn't have to dial 011 before it was written such a long time ago. The document is open for revision as we speak. Please share with us all your thoughts, all your suggestions as you look at that document on what areas it needs for improvement. One of the key things that I'm hoping that we'll get right as well is that we look at the document as something that looks at the service holistically. Right now, it just focuses on fire response, but the fire people in the room would know we do a lot of other things as well, beyond just the red truck. So please use our platform to talk to us about that. We do have quite a bit of influence at the SABS on that kind of thing.
Thank you. Any inputs from you, Kennedy? Oh, we have a hand at the back.
Hey, thank you, Moss. Dr. Moss, Marius. What I would like to ask Marius, due to FPA's contribution to SABS as well, is to actually have technical committees out of stakeholders like this that is actually here. Because there are instances when a technical committee is actually established, when people are actually sitting there, that is there for business interest rather than actually fixing the problem. Right? That's why we're sitting with a sprinkler code still today that is actually not even up to date as yet. Right? So it's technical members that actually have the technical expertise that's going into organizations, going into community or be part of community-based projects, all right? that actually needs to make these technical decisions with regards to the code itself. Right, so that is just my plea for IFPASA, due to the fact that they actually have some sort of an input into the technical committee, and actually the people that works, I mean, fire responders, going to a fire and actually find out there that your resources is actually running short. How does that look into the eyes of community? It's already been broken already. So that's just my plea for Marius and his team.
Okay, no, thanks, well noted. There was the other back.
Morning. Thanks, Dr. Kangel. I think this one is aimed at you and Kennedy as well. You just mentioned the response times of the current fire trucks, and I think Adrian pointed out that those response times are outdated. What happened to the partnership between insurers and the public sector? I think those fire trucks, I don't know whether they are green, yellow, or blue, they could have assisted in the response times. The last time I checked, these were gathering dust at various depots, waiting for authorization from the government. I think when there's a partnership, especially from insurers, where we're trying to lend a hand, I think we need to cut out all these red tapes that are impacting these rollout of these projects. Thanks.
Okay, Kennedy, you want to respond?
Okay. It is the yellow trucks that you're making mention of, and there was an arrangement between a certain company which was giving services to our wildland firefighting, and they were given resources, and that resource was taken back into the government through provinces, and the process of those resources being given to municipalities is currently unfolding. I know Mpumalanga, late last year, they had sent the trucks to various stations, so that process is still unfolding. That's where my response is with that. What company it was, I forgot the name and all that. And with regards to Mr. Etienne, we cannot deny the fact that South Africa is a developing nation. And through its development, there are errors that are being made. And through development and through SABS committees, luckily the SENS 10090, Maras and I are tasked to make some few submissions, of which a lot of that we're expecting to get from such engagements, not only these, but also other engagements that we're part of, and we submit those as to this is what's happening in the country. And through the travel that we're making, through all the services that we interact with in the country, we're trying to better that standard and improve it. But we can surely tell you that it will take maybe about 5-6 years to try and get things almost right. But as it is, there are efforts that are being made to improve the fire service in the country. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Let's give Kennedy and Grace a hand. So it's now 10 o'clock. The tea is until what time, Maras? So we're gonna go for tea until 20 past, and then we reconvene exactly at 20 past. Then we take the next presentation. Just want a short message to smokers: don't start smoking at 20 past. So by 20 past, we must be back. Okay, let's get back. Kevin is going to talk to us. He's from Spill Doctor. Spill Doctor is one of the main sponsors of this event. We're going to give him 10 minutes to talk to us about what they do and their Thank you, Kevin.
Thanks very much. Good morning, everybody. My name is Kevin Murphy, and I represent a company called Spill Doctor South Africa. It's a company that was formed 14 years ago here in South Africa, and prior to that, I operated for 10 years in the United Kingdom, working for a company in the same line of business, and that's all to do with the compliant storage and distribution of flammable liquids. It's a minefield when I came out here in 2010, in that a lot of people were not compliant. And it boiled down to the fact that probably 85% of people in South Africa rent buildings. So for them to spend exorbitant amounts of money putting flammable stores into a landlord's building didn't make any sense. And so therefore you found that a lot of companies were not compliant, and they were basically flying by the seat of their pants. So we try to come up with various ways to try and make companies compliant. It's taken us, as I say, 14 years to get to this stage. And last year we were commissioned by a logistical company here in Johannesburg, probably the largest in South Africa, who in turn were storing and distributing perfumes. As we know, perfumes are extremely flammable and are problematic when you are storing and distributing them around. We then got hold of a company in Rosalind called Panelman, as they were the only company that we could find that could come up with the chromatic panels with the rock wool compressed in between in order to meet the 2-hour fire rating. These panels were tested by Fire Lab and successfully passed the 2-hour fire rating tests that were done. With that, we were then able to proceed. But when I say proceed, I was listening earlier to some of the discussions. There's a lot of red tape that one has to go through, and like change, people don't like change, and a lot of people weren't wanting to take authority as such and passing the project. So it's taken us a long, long time to get to this stage, and what we now do is we put the whole solution together. And it's a 3-stage solution where we apply it to the local municipality, we apply it to the environmental, and we apply it to the fire department to get their sign-off. But prior to getting all their approvals, we also speak to the insurance companies to ensure that they are happy with what we are proposing. It is a product that is acceptable, as I say, it passed all the 2-hour fire rating, and it is a portable product. So for those that are renting buildings, it makes sense that they would rather invest in a portable flammable store, pre-manufactured, that if they ever did move premises, they can take that with them and move into the next premises. However, when approvals are granted, they are granted for that unit to be placed in one position only. If a client wishes to change that position, even if it's by meter, we have to go through the whole process again of getting it reapproved. And that is the laws and legislations that we abide by. There are no shortcuts at all, and we ensure that everything is compliant and signed off. We get fire engineers involved, and the fire engineer will do a rational design, and they will do the structural engineering sign-off as well, and do a Form 2. So with that done, with the first one done, we've now had 8 units around South Africa put into place, and we have got another 9 projects on the go at the moment. So to work with the insurance companies, I operate in the UK, as I said, and I worked with Cornwall Alliance and Norwich looking after their assets and such, everything that they're insuring. They needed to make sure the risk was reduced as much as possible, and that's what we do. So as you can see, we do units. I call them IBCs. I think a lot of people call them flow bins. The smallest unit we do can contain 1 flow bin, and the largest can contain 24 flow bins. And that, to give you an idea, is about the size of a 40-foot container. Everything is manufactured from new. They are not containers. We've come across many places that we go and visit, and they'll have a 20-foot, 40-foot container, and they say that's our flammable store. It's not compliant. It does not work. It's not tested. But you'll be amazed how many people think it is, and they try and cut corners, and we don't cut corners. That's not what we're in business for. So that is the range that we do on the 2-hour fire rated. If we're able to get a separation distance we do not need to fire rate the unit, and that separation distance is effectively 20 meters. But again, from municipality to municipality, there's a bit of discrepancy over what the separation distance is. Some municipalities will accept 15 meters, other guys want 20, 25. So it takes a bit of negotiations and due diligence from the fire engineer who's got to sign the project off on what that safe distance is. So we can do non-fire rated and the 2-hour fire rated stores as well. Moving on, we were then also contacted by a large automobile manufacturer up in Roslyn, and it's for export vehicles for their lithium batteries. And as we know, lithium batteries is the flavor of the month, and everybody's got their views on them and how they're stored. So we worked with their engineers in India and Germany, and we actually manufacture these locally as well. They asked us to certify these boxes. And the only way that you can certify these boxes, and we're the only company in South Africa that's done it, and I think we are the only company in the world that has done it, we took one of their batteries, we put it into the box, and we basically ignited it. We were unable to get a thermal runaway, and that is because, as we all know, in those massive batteries, there's about 18 to 24 different cells. And the cut-offs in those cells were really good, so we couldn't get the thermal runaway. But what we did manage to do is we managed to get a fire going. And that proved that our boxes were a viable option, and we could certify them. And that fire was dosed. I'll show you a little video here. It's not very clear. We had to put a GoPro inside of the box, but you can imagine with the fire and the smoke inside, it didn't come across very clear. Let me see if we can get that up. Sorry. For some reason that doesn't want to play. Let me just go back onto this one here. I'm not sure why that little video doesn't want to play on there, Maris. But what we've got on the top of the boxes is that we've designed a vermiculite holding, and we've got in the large box there's 350 kilos of vermiculite in there. Vermiculite, as we know, is fantastic for dosing fires, but more importantly, it can actually absorb all the chemicals that are released from lithium batteries. And those chemicals are actually more lethal than the fires.
So, can't explain. It says cannot play medium.
Cannot play medium. Right.
So,
that's fine. It's only about a 2-minute run, so that's fine. So that is the extent that we go to as a company, as I say, we do not cut any corners, and if we are going to put products into the market, we want to go out there and we want to test those products before we can get those certified. On to the next sort of range that we do. And then again, we work with clients, and the local bylaw allows people to keep between 250 and 300 liters of flammables inside their workplace, but those have to be stored inside flammable cabinets. The new SANS code, the 54770, those cabinets are going to be tested for 10 minutes. Ours are being tested presently here at Fire Lab as well, but there are FM approved products that come into the market that have already passed the test. Unfortunately with FM, and I'm not here to down anybody, but the cost of doing that, you're talking in the region of 2 million rand every single year to get those tested. And it does not make any sense because the volumes are not here to justify that sort of expenditure. But we know that our cabinets are compliant and they do meet it, and Fire Lab will be issuing the certification pretty soon. And then in the workplace, as we know, you have to have safety showers and eye washes by law on site, and spill pallets and the spill kits. On the spill pallet side, we see that as an option for a lot of people, again in the smaller businesses where they're storing stuff on wooden pallets, and they think that's compliant. Again, that isn't compliant. So we would like to try and work as much as we can with the insurance companies, with the fire departments, to try and get a standard regulation, if at all possible, throughout South Africa. As we all know, you've got, I'm not sure exactly how many municipalities, but where I'm based down in KZN, we've got about 19 different local bylaws in all the different fire stations. And some people allow 250 litres, some people allow 350 litres, some people accept separation distances, some don't, and they're not willing to standardise it. So that is something that we're trying to work with people to try and get it standardised here in South Africa. A lot of those laws, as we heard earlier, are very antiquated laws. Some of them go back to the 1970s, some of the laws. And again, hopefully working with the fire associations, we can try and get that standardised. But to keep it as brief as I can, on the 90-minute fire-rated cabinets, these are all TUV approved, and they're imported from Germany. And those generally tend to be for the laboratory companies here in South Africa. However, there are other manufacturers that do require 90-minute fire rating, and we can do 30, 60, and 90-minute in those cabinets, in that range of cabinets, and the range of corrosive safety cabinets as well. That is the range of spill pallets that we do, and again, we can store from 1 IBC, and we're just about to launch a new product that will be able to hold 3 IBCs. Obviously, the big advantage, any spillage, it's contained in that spill pallet, and people can retrieve their flammables or their chemicals out of that pallet and stop to going to stormwater drains. A very important part, we've seen what happened down in our area about 3.5, 4 years ago when we had the unfortunate incident with the riots. The Mgani River to this day, so 3.5, 4 years later, there's still not one living creature in that river. And that was because the chemical factory where the fire took place, a whole lot leaked into the Mgani, and there's no crustaceans, there's no prawns, lobsters, there's absolutely nothing 3.5, 4 years later. So that's what we try and get across to our clients, how important it is. The fines that go with that pollution is incredibly hefty fines. And the eye wash stations speak for themselves. We have a range of eye washers from combination eye wash and showers to portable units and eye wash stations on their own. And the spill kits, as I say, by law, anybody storing any kind of flammables or liquids by law has to have spill kits on site. And we do a range of that for our clients. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. 10 minutes was all I had, and I thank you for your time and appreciate your patience. Thank you.
Informative. We're grateful for those slides. We're going to call upon Mr. Ockhazen. Articulation and fire safety. And maybe just before, as he's coming up and Marius is putting up the presentation, the point that Kevin raises is also critical around standardizing some of these bylaws, because KZN has 54 municipalities, and if you have 54 different bylaws on something that could be standardized at provincial level or at district level, I think that's a low-hanging opportunity. And I know you deal with those issues. I think it's a challenge also for some of the other colleagues that are here within the space of municipal fire services to say we need to look at opportunities to standardize so that compliance can be seamless, as opposed to having to comply with 54 different requirements in one space. So I think that's something that I thought was critical for us to note. We now have Sean Ockhazen is the GM of Woodlands Fire, South Africa's last remaining local manufacturer of fire hydrants and specialized firefighting equipment. That's Woodlands Fire. He has over a decade of experience in fire protection industry. His expertise ranges from manufacturing, system design, installation, regulatory compliance, with a strong focus on hydrant systems and water articulation. His career began, I'm paraphrasing, so if you're also reading there, don't be surprised. His career began in 2011 and has been actively involved in conducting risk assessments on site, working closely with fire departments and water services departments to identify design flaws and implement practical measures that align with applicable standards. His responsibilities include development and supply of valves used in water articulation systems, where he assists municipalities and private sector in managing water flow, pressure control, and ensuring infrastructure resilience in both fire protection and general distribution networks. Sean currently serves as a vice chairperson of the Firefighting Equipment Traders Association and sits on several SABS South African Bureau of Standards technical committees, including SANS 1910, SANS 1475, SANS 543, SANS 1128, and TC 21. Qualification-wise, he holds a bachelor degree of commerce from the University of South Africa and has completed several SAQCC accredited training programs. Sean regularly conducts training sessions for registered technicians and participates in SAQCC national road shows. He brings along deep industry knowledge and commitment to compliance, which essentially makes him a respected figure in the field of fire safety and water infrastructure. So, colleagues and delegates, we have Sean, he's got an hour. So we'll want you to make notes. After that, we'll have a panel discussion. But Sean, we are in your hands. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that introduction. As mentioned, my name is Sean. I'm here to just share a bit of information and experience and knowledge that I've accumulated over the years, and hopefully that can enlighten just a little bit of us. As mentioned, my presentation today is going to be on fire systems and water reticulation, and in South Africa that is a paradox that we currently experiencing. Where do we try and focus on increased water supply to communities and to properties in order to have more effective firefighting capabilities? And where do we have to limit those water supplies due to a lack of infrastructure, a lack of supply, and a limitation of resources available? There is a deadly cost of fire safety failures. I do have a video. I understand that there's no audio. It is regarding the fire that took place in Johannesburg recently, and it outlines quite a bit of what it is that I will be discussing over the presentation. It's the water availability, the challenge of having outdated standards, a lack of unity between those standards, and the failures that have encountered over the years. I'll be discussing the standards and whether they are adequate or inadequate, what resource constraints we've experienced, and the accountability or the lack thereof from various stakeholders. Because the video doesn't even play, Maurice. It's the program itself. Okay. Apologies for that. Okay. So, as it was, I don't know if we're all aware of the fire that took place in Johannesburg. It was a condemned building that was occupied, call it illegally, that was rented out by cartels to the vulnerable parts of our communities. And due to the fact that it was condemned, it had been left alone. It had been forgotten by the community. And in there were over 70 people that died. 12 people of them were children. People were jumping from the windows in order to escape the flames. And one of the major challenges were that there was only one exit route available. There was the fire escapes that were designated were inaccessible, and that video, that fire highlights a systemic problem that we've experienced over the years within our fire community and our fire safety, is that how often are there times where our buildings meet the required standards? How often are there times where our buildings meet the required expectations? And there's a difference between what standards dictate and require, what are being installed and maintained, as well as the expectation between consumers and developers and national bodies. South Africa is a water-scarce nation. The protection of lives and assets from fire hazards depend heavily on the water availability. This dual challenge requires the systems to be designed with precision and not excess. We're going through the core of the fire safety standards. I'm going to be discussing the 090, the Red Book, which was developed by the CSIR, the 10400 Part T, and then just going to highlight slightly on maintenance, installation, and enforcement challenges. What is the purpose of our standards? First and foremost is to protect life and health. They ensure safe evacuation routes, sufficient water supply for firefighting, preventing structural collapse, structural integrity under the conditions addressed in 10400 Part T, minimizing property loss, limiting the extent of fire damage reduces rebuilding costs and economic disruption, supporting emergency responses, hydrant locations and pressurized systems requirements will assist with hydrant services and not hinder them. And ensuring accountability, the standards define legal obligations for municipalities and insurers, property owners. What standards are there? 090. I've made a note of the enforceable standard. It's, as we've highlighted with Kennedy, is that it's not currently enforced, not widely. There are municipalities, or I know of at least one that has formally written it into their bylaws, but there are a number of other municipalities which reference it as part of their design criteria. The challenge is that the 090 is a community standard, which is difficult to enforce when we're talking about private developments. And due to the fact that there's so much scrutiny under private developments, community expectations and standards tend to fall by the wayside. The 252s, 10252, which is the piping size requirements for private development, pressurized regulations, which I will then just highlight what it says with regards to the hydrants and hose reel requirements. The 10400 Part T, which is quite widely known and understood, it gets revised regularly, which enforces the applications for hydrants, hose reels, access and suppression systems within the buildings. And then I'm going to be discussing the Red Book, the challenges and understandings behind it, which is also not an enforceable standard and is often used as part of their design requirements where there's discrepancies between the Red Book and the 090. So what is the 090? 090, as highlighted by Kennedy's, got different risk classifications for different types of community areas. The requirements as stipulated in the 090 is the flow for that area or for that supply over a period of time. The calculation is to work out what is the required minimum flow for the hydrant system, what is the expected daily use in that area, and you will work out what your cubic supply needs to be. But the challenge lies is that as much as the minimum flow is governed there, it is often not achievable due to the infrastructure in place or the supply by the water departments. The second challenge is that the 090 talks about minimum hydrant flows being more than what the 10400 talks about, being 1,200 liters per minute at 300 kPa. And often these types of hydrant flows are not enforced or not recommended. Hydrants are utilized by the fire department in order to draw water, in order to assist in the pumping operations of buildings during an emergency. The fire department will increase the pressure in a localized building in order to make firefighting operations more effective. As stipulated, the D-class provisions is not always widely understood and widely implemented. Houses being 30 meters apart is houses being 30 meters apart. It's not 30 meters to your boundary line and another 30 meters to your boundary line. It's 15-15 in that sense. What does the standard 10400 talk about hydrant requirements? Hydrants are required in buildings above 12 meters high with a floor area of more than 1,000 square meters. The spacing in the 10400, which is different from the 090, talks about maximum of 90 meters apart with a hydrant every 1,000 square meters and every story. They recommend the hose's lengths to be between 24 and 30 meters and a 16 millimeter nozzle. But the proviso in the 10400 stipulates that this is only in accordance with local authorities' recommendation. And again, it's a non-enforceable requirement. So it's, if the local authority mentions it, we'll have it. However, due to understanding of cost-cutting natures, it often gets overlooked, which limits the amount of equipment available on site in emergencies. The 10400 says that all hydrants that are installed need to meet the manufacturing requirements of 1128-1, the control or installation requirements of 10105, and the maintenance requirements of 1475. Hydrants, hose reels, my apologies, mandated for buildings exceeding 250 square meters and more than 2 stories, except for H4 classifications. This must be spaced every 500 square meters to ensure coverage of all zones. And suppression systems such as sprinklers are mandated for different classifications. Then over on to the Red Book. The Red Book has lower flow limits in terms of community supply, which has a direct contradiction to what is stipulated in the 090. High-risk classifications in 090 would require 13,000 liters per minute for the area, and high-risk classifications according to the Red Book only require 6,000. Hydrant flows is 2,000 in the high risk of 090 versus 1,500 in the Red Book. Low risks are supplied less than even the building regulations, 1,200 liters per minute, when calculating the flow of hydrants and flows. So the contradictory nature between the Red Book and the 090 creates a lot of confusion when implemented by different developers and different community authorities. The Red Book undercuts the enforceability standards of 090 and may mislead planners into under-providing water. Some other challenges that have been experienced when we talk about the 10252 standard is the incorrect piping sizes and installation challenges. Common issues that are found is undersized piping. When talking about 10252, depending on the size of the hydrants supplied, will be a minimum of 80 millimeters, or depending on the size and the distance, 100 millimeters is then recommended. There are often times where municipalities and water departments will give buildings a municipal connection of 50 millimeters to be able to provide to their ring mains, which is incorrect when according to the requirements as stipulated in the 10400 and the 10252. And the discrepancies are between the different departments and development agencies. Problem is maintaining pressures of working pressure of 300 kPa, which is the stipulation of the 10400. As highlighted by Kennedy, there have been public statements by water departments that they are limiting their supply to less than 300 regardless of what the national standard says. Calculation errors, often bends, tees, elbows, elevation, elevation is not included in the calculation of water flow, which does lead to incorrect flow when the actual application is implemented. And then improper connections. Oftentimes we connect our domestic lines directly off the fire line. Oftentimes this will be before or after the boosting system, which can lead to additional damages to the domestic units, taps, sinks, geysers, etc. These are violations in the standard where there's a mandation of having 1,200 liters per minute on hydrants without a drop in pressure. Additional challenges is hydrant maintenance, something which I feel is quite well understood, but often the understanding the maintenance problems is not always implemented. Hydrants are often neglected. We have numerous cases where dry hydrants or low pressure hydrants are identified. They're not always reported, they're not always replaced. Physical damages to hydrants, vandalized and inaccessible hydrants and cupboards. Component failures, threads and connection points which get damaged and not replaced or are either not standard. Missing equipment, where there are hoses and nozzles, they get stolen and never replaced. Hydrants are also stipulated to be sealed, and those seals may not be maintained. Accessibility issues, hidden cabinets obscured by vegetation or debris. Do we know where our equipment is? Do we know where our hydrants are? The 10400 demands compliance with 1475 Part 2, which requires servicing intervals. These are often ignored or overlooked. The legal enforcement and non-compliance offences. Under 10400 Part T, non-compliance with hydrant requirements is a legal offence. Building owners can be prosecuted for non-operational systems. Equipment violations, hydrant hose reels which are not provided for or not operational. Safety route violations, where there's safety routes or escape routes which are obstructed or non-functional. And maintenance violations in accordance with the standards. Offenders may face fines and building approval revocations, as well as imprisonment for severe negligence. Oftentimes, as much as the 10400 makes allowances for this, communities, fire departments, water departments, and local government authorities don't enforce these requirements. Local Department of Labour would go out and not be aware of the compliance requirements and overlook certain non-conformances. Fire department, which would rely on having more extensive knowledge, may overlook or may resign themselves to the fact that the equipment is not operational. These are things that happen every day. So what is the role of certain key players? The role of insurance companies within the industry, such as our risk assessors and underwriters, is coverage assessment. Insurance companies can withhold cover for non-compliant sites or buildings. It is in their benefit to ensure that the equipment is compliant. It is in their benefit to ensure that the equipment is sufficient. It will reduce their exposure if there is ever a risk. Claims denial. There is a possibility of denying fire claims where hydrants were inoperable or missing. Testing requirements. We are aware that some insurers, not all, require annual hydrant certificates from registered companies. There is also a drive at the moment from insurers to also do formal flow testing on hydrant systems in order to ensure that the hydrants at all points are meeting the minimum national requirements. And the insurance companies can collaborate with local municipalities. As mentioned in which I did not know was the number of municipalities in the KZN region. It's a daunting task to have more than 50 municipalities to communicate with. But collaboration between the multiple stakeholders can be important. What can the fire department do? fire department can enforce the requirements and report non-compliances. Local fire departments are the first responders and ideal watchdogs. Their roles should include hydrant monitoring, report dead or dry hydrants to the water departments. Again, the 090s talks about community infrastructure. That forms heavily part of the Water Services Act, which forms part of the water departments. In many municipalities where I've had the fortunate involvement in, it stipulates hydrants fall part of the water department's network infrastructure. Yet, oftentimes, water departments will stipulate they've received no reports from the fire departments for any hydrants compliant or not. System mapping. There are multiple water departments which have implemented system mapping for their hydrants. My question is are those reports, are those maps available to the fire department? Are they available to community developers, to insurance companies? Are they documented as to what is accessible or inaccessible, what is operational or non-operational? Incident documentation. Logging incidences where fire suppression had failed due to a lack of water, and potential rezoning or infrastructure upgrades within the water department space. Municipal and water authority responsibilities. The municipals and water departments are ultimately responsible for infrastructure support to the fire departments, ensuring water is of a sufficient pressure, as well as the pipe sizing supports all hydrants in the developments. As mentioned earlier, there are times where a water department will give a complex, corporate park, apartment block a 50 mil connection point in order to supply all of their water reticulation fire ring mains, and leave it onto the onus of the developers to develop pumps and tanks in order to supply the sufficient water. This should be forming part of the water department's responsibility and role. Maintenance, repairing and replacing failed units. As highlighted, oftentimes fire departments stipulate they've reported dead or dry hydrants in their respective areas, and according to their feedback, water departments do not action the reports that get given. There is maintenance standards in place in legislation for the processes for maintenance. Testing schedules. Water departments can implement testing schedules and make them publicly known to ensure that certain areas get tested and pressure tested regularly. Biggest challenge, which highlighted, is funding. Funding hydrant upgrades in older zones. And accountability, something that often gets overlooked or underspoken about. Accountability in construction and engineering. Contractors and plumbing engineers must install SANS compliant systems in accordance with the regulations. Must provide testing documentation where they had tested their flow and pressures before completion. Oftentimes, fire departments or water departments or local authorities will take the assumption that the equipment is operational. There are local authorities which will stipulate they will do the testing in order to ensure compliance. There is no universal or universally defined criteria. Detailed drawings. The detailed drawings to have as-built drawings with the hydrant layouts already in place. And then utilizing the correct equipment and fittings. There are times where equipment does not meet any of the local authority connections. We have had discussions with multiple local authorities across the country. Different fire departments have different connections. London round threads, London V threads, NST, different hose types. These are things that often get overlooked by developers and by community entities, that the equipment available won't meet the equipment supplied. And the consequences of outdated infrastructure. There are many hydrants that are installed pre-2000s, where there are missing outlets or valves are not identifiable. The operational aspects of those hydrants are non-existent. They're inaccessible, located in overgrown areas or under paving. many hydrants fire departments are aware were installed underground. As time came and development happened, driveways and paving and beddings were installed over the hydrants and the boxes were taken away. Unlisted on any database, any mapping systems, and poor connections. Often there were hydrants installed on aging pipes, asbestos and old types of steel pipes which are corroding and are undersized. Having modern asset management tools in place for local authorities is important, but can only happen if local authorities invest in mapping and updating infrastructure. The misinterpretation and misuse of the Red Book. The Red Book, although well intended, is also only a guideline. And often misuse happens when engineers will work out lower flow rate requirements instead of 090 or 10400. The municipalities will often approve these plans based on the Red Book values in order to save water. And developers will exploit these shortcuts in order to exclude costs from high-risk areas by classifying it differently to what it should be. This puts developments and their future residencies at an unnecessary risks and should be discouraged. We have training gaps and certification gaps. As highlighted, there is quite a number of discrepancies in our standards, quite a number of discrepancies between our local authorities. And effective systems depend on qualified and trained personnel. The current gaps include personnel issues. There are oftentimes unregistered contractors working on hydrant systems, fire systems. Building managers are often unaware of servicing or scheduled requirements. And inspectors, whether it be local Department of Labor, fire department or water department, are not often trained in order to identify violations. The certification requirements are well documented, whereby 1475 has a registration of SAQCC's fire, which will register all installers and servicing companies under the standard, whereby the enforcement of this credibility is essential. So insurance companies, water departments, fire departments and such can require evidence of registration and compliance. And recommendations for the industry and government. Systemic improvements. Having annual hydrant audits for all buildings above 1,000 square meters. As stipulated in the 10400, this is a requirement to have this equipment in the building. Empower our fire departments. Empower to report and fine non-compliances. Look at amending the Red Book in order to get it aligned with other standards, and this is applicable to the 090 as well. To amend it with clear disclaimers where it conflicts with the SANS codes. Having mandatory layout approvals. Having hydrant layout approvals prior to building handovers. Utilizing smart technology in our systems. We talk about technology, we talk about information of things, merging these technologies with our existing infrastructure. It can help identify pressure loss, it can help identify dry barrel hydrants, it can help identify all the challenges that we are experiencing on a daily basis. And then registration enforcement. Enforcing the registration, enforcing the required companies that are working on the equipment to be registered with SAQCC, being the regulatory body for fire hydrant maintenance. In conclusion, we need to reclaim confidence in our fire systems. Many people I speak to often are not confident in our fire departments, are not confident in our water departments, are not confident in local authority or government. It comes largely due to the fact that they're not confident in service delivery or expertise or knowledge or implementation. And this comes back from a lot of systemic issues that we experience. Fire safety is robust. Our standards, as with our laws, are robust, but on paper. We don't implement our standards, we don't implement our laws effectively enough. We don't enforce them on a daily basis. Hydrants remain an indispensable asset for fire departments, especially for prolonged or inaccessible fires. However, through consistent testing, informed regulation, and empowered authorities, hydrant infrastructure can serve again as the backbone of an effective and sustainable firefighting response. Fire safety is not only about design, it's also about vigilance, compliance, and a shared commitment to protect life and property. Thank you very much.
Bigger than what we had anticipated. But yeah, so in terms of the program, we were gonna have a panel discussion if Sean had taken the allocated time, but he had taken much less. So we want to innovate and bring upon then one of the speakers that was going to come after lunch, which is Dr. Titi from the City of Tshwane. She's going to talk to us about fire service hydrant inspection and testing. Then when she's done, we'll have a 20-minute discussion. Then we'll go to lunch. Yeah. So I think that will be optimal in terms of our time management. Let's introduce Dr. Titi. I will also paraphrase here. Tanya Terablanche is a highly experienced emergency service and disaster risk management professional with 29 years of service. Currently, she's the divisional chief responsible for business operations, which covers fire safety enforcement, emergency planning, emergency communication center, disaster risk management, and emergency services training academy in the City of Tshwane. Qualification-wise, she holds a PhD in disaster science from Northwest University, Potchefstroom campus, completed in 2023, where her research focused on the progress of cities in implementing the SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals, particularly in relation to urban resilience and sustainability. She has a master's degree in fire tech from Tshwane University of Technology, obtained in 2012. Focus of research was on emergency evacuation procedures for schools during emergencies. She began her career in 1996 in the SA Air Force. Must I stop? No, that's fine. I'm happy you say I stopped because I could have summed it up because I know you well and I know you wouldn't take offense, but I wanted to just ensure that you are working up as I introduce you. So yeah, we have Tanya here, colleagues. She's gonna talk to us about fire services, hydrant inspection and testing. I think it builds on what Sean was saying, and it will make our conversation more seamless once we start looking at them in an integrated manner. So Tanya, you have 30 minutes. You could go to 35 if needed, but you have 30. Talk to us and then we'll have a conversation.
Dr. Kongala, I really appreciate that. I normally do not appreciate all these long things of introducing me. Just say Tanya and then I'm fine. I'll start the presentation. Sean has taken a lot of what I wanted to say. Unfortunately, I did not have this presentation with me to change while he was speaking. So please bear with me. You might get information that was already shared by Sean. So I was asked to do a presentation more on fire maintenance and the inspections of fire hydrants. So my discussion will be on what we do as a local authority. I'm from City of Tshwane Emergency Services, and within my division, I've got a responsibility of fire hydrants. So I think it's important that you know and understand where the fire brigade or the local government comes into when it comes to the maintenance of fire hydrants. So I will have a discussion on the overview of fire hydrants, applicable codes and legislation, which was touched by Sean, the types of fire hydrants and the outlets. Important aspect that we need to discuss is the outlets of the different fire hydrants. The water reticulation, hydrant maintenance in the City of Tshwane. I will share what we are doing. So please don't go to City of Johannesburg and tell them, but Tshwane is doing it like this. I'm presenting what the City of Tshwane is doing. And then considerations, what you as the insurance company can do to assist us. So first of all, there's a slide on the overview of fire hydrants. Fire hydrants, in short, is important for the fire brigade. That's what we need to extinguish fires effectively and quickly. If we don't have fire hydrants, we will have more fires. Fires will spread. Damages will be more. So that is important for us to have fire hydrants. In the City of Tshwane, when you do an application for a building, we do the fire hydrant assessment or the fire hydrant placements as well. You need to indicate to us where will your fire hydrants be. You need to indicate to us what is the water meter size, because there's different sizes as well in water meters. It all depends on your development that you want to do. The types of fire hydrants, there's two types of fire hydrants. You get your wet barrel fire hydrant and your dry barrel fire hydrant. In South Africa, mostly, we've got the wet barrel fire hydrant. So what does that mean? It means there's continuously water in the fire hydrant. If it's a wet hydrant, then there's no water. Mostly in areas where there's extreme cold, there you will get your dry barrel fire hydrant. Okay, the applicable codes and legislation that we are using, these are the legislation that we use when we start at urban planning. So it means when you start the development, we look at the legislation, and also during inspections, we look at this type of legislations. And Sean has mentioned some of it. It's the firefighting equipment, the type of material that you need to use, the SANS 1128, the hose couplings, the fire hose reels and above ground hydrants, and I think it's also on the program, the application of the National Building Regulations, and other legislation that we are using. Okay, this is just to show the different type of hydrants. So you get the dry barrel hydrant, the wet barrel hydrant, and then the outlets. In the City of Tshwane, our vehicles do have connectors that fits different outlets. So we have standpipes, we have the 100 mil, we've got the 65s. What we normally do when there's a final inspection that needs to be conducted, we get our fire engine to come and do the assessment on the fire hydrant to make sure that the connector fits the fire engine. Right, so that is what we then do. Okay, the water reticulation, and I think this is an important part that we need to have a discussion on. The water reticulation for a fire hydrant is drinking water. In South Africa, we use drinking water for the fire hydrants. So now the question is, isn't it a waste of water? That's been a debate for a long time. I think you will see the people that's washing the cars are using fire hydrants. Even in instances where there is these plaza shops and people next to the road that's selling food, they use that water. Now, I think last week, Handwater announced there will be water cuts for 107 hours. Were your buildings ready for that? Because your water on the fire hydrant is linked to the main supply. We normally do not think about it. We think about ourselves, we don't have water, but what about our firewater? Will we have firewater? Because our engines do have firewater. We've got water tankers, but it's going to delay the process of collecting water and come fill your engines again. sketch to show you in a simple way how fire hydrant reticulation works. I don't know why you're laughing at the back. So this is a normal illustration of how the water reticulation works. So you will have your main line, which is the municipal fire hydrant, and let me see if so you've got your main line with the municipal fire hydrant. In your main line, you will have your water connection, where the water meter will be. So the red part, it's our responsibility. So if there's an issue with your street fire hydrant, or it's blocked, it doesn't operate, it's our responsibility. The city needs to maintain the red part. The green part is not our responsibility. So anything beyond the water meter is the responsibility of the owner of the building. So this is what we need to ensure that you know this. Many times we get calls to say, but our fire hydrant is not working, or our fire hydrant is leaking. When we arrive there, it's inside. It's not our responsibility. Right? The owner or the person that's using the building needs to maintain it. And that is being done through private plumbers and private companies. Right? So take note of that. So the internal fire hydrant must still comply to the minimum requirements. We still need 20 liters per second or 300 kPa. Alright? Or then, as Sean has said, 1,200 liters per minute. We still need that. We will test it. And then the necessary actions will then be taken. So in the city, what we do, our responsibility is to have access restrictions. It is unfortunate that the fire hydrants is being misused in various areas. We have two types of keys, hydrant keys. One of the types of hydrant keys was sponsored by Santam, they assisted us. And then we've got a different hydrant keys. Our vehicles do carry all these keys to these hydrants. Right? It is easy to open a fire hydrant. A wheel spanner opens a fire hydrant. So what our issue is, when they use the wheel spanner to open the fire hydrant, the thread on top gets damaged and we can't open it. So we, as far as we can, provide access restrictions. Visibility, we also do make sure that the hydrants is visible for our people, for the fire brigade services. Above ground maintenance is our responsibility as the fire brigade. Another thing that we need to remember, there's two parts of the fire hydrant. You've got the above ground and the underground. Above ground is our responsibility to maintain it. Maintenance means paint, cleaning around it, make sure that the washer is there, make sure that the seal is there. Anything below ground is water and sanitation. They need to deal with it. So what we do is we go out to the fire hydrant. If we do see the pressure is low or it leaks and we can't fix the leak, we refer it to water and sanitation. Right? So that is what we do as well. Pressure and flow testing, it's our responsibility as well. We can assist your buildings to do pressure and flow testing against the fee, obviously. You will have to then pay the tariff for that, and that includes internal hydrants as well. We are able to do that. The location mapping. This is how we map our hydrants, but this is being done by our water and sanitation department. So what they do is the water department maps where all the fire hydrants are. This is actually a very complicated map because it shows you where the hydrant is. It shows you if there's a leak, which valves must be closed and which valves must be opened. So, but this is water and sanitation. This is what they are doing. At the city, we've got an agreement with Hollard, which is here in the meeting. So Hollard is a youth program. I think it's for the past 2 years that we
are educating or training the youth in hydrant maintenance. So they do not only focus on the buildings of Hola, they assist us with all street fire hydrants, where they do maintenance on those hydrants. So they paint it, they mark it where it's needed, and they've got an app that I spoke to Lani and them to say that we want to adopt that app. They've got an application where the individual that goes out to do a maintenance on the hydrant takes a picture in before and takes a picture afterwards to see what have been done, what did they do. They also do plotting, and they will indicate to you what's wrong with this hydrant. Is it flow? Is it pressure? Is it leaking? And I think that's something that's assisting us, because we can then communicate to water and sanitation to attend to those hydrants. So when we do hydrant inspections, we've got a hydrant inspection list. We can share this with you, so that in your buildings you can require once a month or annually to have this type of inspections conducted, inspection list to be completed. Our key challenges as the fire department, we see illegal connections on the hydrants. You will see some of the businesses decide, because it's drinking water, they want to attach a connector to use this water. And this is actually theft, because it's the municipality's water. There's no water meter to this. So you're stealing the water of the municipality, you're not paying for it. Then, not visible and obstructed, it is difficult when there is no fire hydrants. We know it is in this area, but we don't have time to look for it. That's causing us a delay in finding the hydrants. And then the below ground debris, this is what we find normally. It's images where we can't find a hydrant. You will see in one instance they had to dig up the whole area. As Sean has said, they put paving over the hydrant, the below ground. We can't find it. So we need to dig it up to find where the hydrants are. So what can you do as the insurer? First of all, regular inspections and testing, but the key is to make sure it is a SAQCC accredited inspector or person that you use. The fly-by-nights is not they're going to open it and say, yeah, it's this, it's fine, let's go with it. No, make sure it's SAQCC 1475. Common repairs and upgrades. This is within your means. It doesn't mean you have to get a plumber or anyone else to charge you if you can actually just change the seal. Just do basic maintenance on the hydrant. Ensure visibility and accessibility. What in the area where I'm staying, the community, what they've done is they took duct tape, reflective duct tape, and they've put it around the hydrant. So when you drive at night, you can see there is a hydrant because the duct tape is reflecting. And it's a quick fix. You can see it. There's no need for a cat eye. There's no need for a board. Reflective duct tape and it's visible. And then collaboration with the fire department. This is important. We will not know if the hydrant is leaking. We will not know if there's access to the hydrant if you don't report it to us. We only have a certain amount of fire safety officers to conduct these inspections. You have buildings that the people can engage the emergency services. So use the opportunity. I think the previous time when we spoke as well, use the fire brigade and use the fire department to assist you where there's non-compliance. Then my last slide, unfortunately, I'm done. Fire hydrants are critical, but we underestimate the value of fire hydrants. And a typical example is what happened with rainwater. We didn't have water. How many of us thought about the fire hydrants? So it is important that we make sure that we have sufficient water for the protection of your building. As the fire brigade and local government, there is water scarcity. The water availability, it's not stable. We know that there's water cuts, there's water leaks.
My recommendation to you would be get off the grid. Get tanks, get fire hydrant tanks to make sure your building is extra protected. That's my presentation. Thank you.
We say to people they have time and they don't want to use it. Yeah. No, that's fine. Thanks. I think you brought to surface a lot of issues that we should be able to link up with what Sean has provided. So maybe Sean and Dr. Titi, you can sit here. Let's see, colleagues, any questions? Let's start with questions. Clarity seeking, wanting to know more about standards and related stuff. We have 30 minutes for questions. So Pam will start from Saia.
Thanks, Moses. It might be an ignorant question, so forgive me in advance. The fire services bill, does it integrate all of these elements, fire services as a basic service, fire hydrants, connection with the water and sanitation department with regards to the piping, flow, pressure? Does all of that become encapsulated in that bill? Or is there more policy development needed?
Okay, so that one, Titi, I don't know if you'll be able to deal with it. It relates to whether these issues that we are talking about, fire hydrants, maintenance, water supply pressures, and related stuff are included in the bill. And what I can say is I brought with me the white paper here on fire services, and my recollection, and when I looked at it, and what is preferable is that you make references to relevant standards. So in other words, in the bill, you will not necessarily exhaustively deal with these issues because they are too technical. You need to leverage the point that Kennedy and Sean made, where you then refer to a standard almost similar to 10400, where you are able to refer to a standard that becomes enforceable. So that means that when you get to that point, you will have a regulation on how you want to deal with this, but then in that regulation you anchor it with relevant standards, so that you don't rewrite what is already on a standard. You must incorporate. I think that's the approach that should be followed. But currently in the white paper, there was an acknowledgement, because there you deal with policy principles, that there must be modalities to ensure that there's adequate water supply for firefighting. That's all you say there. Then when you drill into the second layer in terms of regulation, you can then incorporate the other standards. So I just thought maybe, given my previous life, I could deal with that so that I don't stress you, Sean, and Titi. You will add when you come. Other questions? Thanks for that, Pam. This time we want questions. It's compulsory to ask questions, colleagues. We can't not have questions. I will ask mine, but I don't want to dominate. Yeah, there's a hand there.
Hi, good day. It's me again. Sorry, Lindley Carols. I'm from the University of Victoria. So what we actually also done now at the universities is actually installing tanks to actually manage fire and both commercial use as well. Right, so that actually started happening about 6 years when I started there. So that was the initiative, actually, just to have some sort of prevention measures, fire prevention measures in place for property protection and also life safety. But I would like to ask from the city of Tshwane, how far is water upgrades with regards to the infrastructure? Because there's a lot of water leakages, just if you're looking at around the main campus in Hatfield, for instance. And some of these infrastructures we actually need to actually then buy in and actually help and assist with these types of upgrades. And then also from an insurance point of view, because I mean, this weekend that we actually didn't have any water or were water there was due to maintenance aspects and stuff. What was the fire brigade's preparedness plans with regards to extra water resources or tanks or tankers in the city? The reason why I'm asking this also because of resources. We had an incident, one of our generators actually burned due to load shedding and etc. Response time was very, very, very late. I mean, Hatfield Fire Station is across the road and it took Central Fire Station to respond. So with regards to resources, how are we looking at in the city of Tshwane?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Carroll, sir. Let's take a few, if there's a hand on that, let's come this side. Can we get an indication by show of hand? Okay, let's deal with that, Dr. Titi, and then I'll ask my questions and keep the conversation alive.
Okay. You don't have to think about questions. If you don't have anything, it's fine. We can have lunch. So, Mr. Carroll, sir, first of all, well done for getting your own tanks installed. I think that's the best move that any resident, not only industry, can do, is to get off the grid. It is unfortunate that I will not be able to answer your question on the upgrades. In the city of Tshwane, we have weekly, they call it the mayoral war room, where on a weekly basis we have to report to the mayor what is the status of upgrades of water leaks. There is a huge amount of water leaks in the city. There is a strategy that's being put in place to deal with water leaks. We are actually have advised to get the private companies involved into dealing with water leaks. Unfortunately, in the city, the turnaround time to deal with a water leak is between 7 and 10 days. It is unfortunate that the infrastructure in the city is aged. So we have to replace many of these water pipes. I've seen that they are patching the water pipes, but if you have a water pipe of 1 meter long, they've got already 3 patches. So we have to replace those water lines. So it's taking, and you might see in various areas they have started to replace water lines. So, but it's a tedious process, and it's a costly process. It does cost a lot, and it is a lot of inconvenience when there is poor infrastructure. The issue of response times, luckily I'm not here to talk about response times and resources. I'm here to talk about the fire hydrants now. We have, what we do is in the city, when one of our units are out of commission because of the number of resources available, we allocate that unit to the nearest station, and Central, unfortunately, is the nearest station. It all depends on response times, all depends on the day, the time of the day, all right? We have in the city a lot of roadworks that's taking place, and it obviously has an effect on our response times. I'm glad to hear that the 1090 is out for comments, because our response times, we do not achieve those response times. And I think in many of the municipalities, the achieving of those response times, it's difficult. Because of the urbanization in the city, the maintenance, so our response times is affected. So it all depends on the day of the time of the day when you have your call. But I think we can have a discussion offline as well. When was the call? So that we can investigate what was the reason for the poor response or the late response from our side. Then, just to add to the fire services bill, we use the bill, but as Dr. Kay has indicated, it refers you to various legislations that you need to. It won't stipulate to say this is what should be in there. You will use different legislations. And additional to the bill is our bylaws. All right, so when we do our bylaws, we also attempt to go to the legislation that talks about various aspects and bring it into the bylaw. So when you read the bylaw, it's going to be easier for you. It's one document. Then you can refer. We'll put in our notes. We are now in the process of reviewing our bylaw. So we will reference the bylaw to say, where did we get this? But we're trying to make it user-friendly so that we don't go to different legislations to use this. Thank you.
No, thanks. I think that helps. Dr. Titi, let's see, we still have time for questions, colleagues. There's a question here. I'm going to use all my skills to extract questions today.
Hi. This question actually it refers to into the educational facilities. All these primary schools and high schools that obviously in the rural areas where you will find that they do not have resources. The municipality doesn't have resources, and you notice that the water supply coming from the town main, it's perhaps like a 40 mil coming in, and it's actually difficult to upgrade that line because they do not have resources, to do that. Now, obviously, we spoke of the fact that you will need a hydrant, the minute when you start exceeding 1,000 square meters. Now, how do we deal with that challenge? That's one. Number two, the question, it has to do with maintenance. If in these schools, and then we are to bring all these firefighting equipment, like your pumps, your tanks, and everything. I mean, there's hardly no maintenance. I mean, we are talking about a very big, massive fire equipment, like a fire pump or diesel pump or whatever, and then in the private, these government schools, you will install these equipment, but yet, they are not well looked after because there's no resources to actually do that. So how do we actually deal with it and then come into cohesion? I don't know if my two questions are.
You get that, Sean and Titi. Okay, whilst the mic is there, if there's a question there at the back, if not, Sean, do you want to pick that up? I'm hearing it to be leaning more and more towards the points that both of you raised around eventually getting alternative forms of supply in instances where local authorities are not able to meet the requisite pressure. But you can chip in is the mic here, Kennedy? Okay. Yes, yeah, Sean. Sean must say something.
Thank you. It's a very good point that you've raised, and it's challenges that's experienced across the country. In many rural areas, there's communities that are quite a distance away from any local service providers or any local fire departments, whereby water infrastructure in that region has met their mandate to provide water to an area rather than trying to have a foresight of providing larger amounts of water. In your point of raising to say that the pipe supply to the community was a 40 millimeter pipe, I mean, at no point will that pipe provide any sort of flow for any firefighting locations. And it's a difficult challenge because upgrading such an infrastructure will cost quite a lot of money, which in those areas are not available. I know many fire departments and officers that are involved with development in these areas will go and try and encourage pumps and tanks and developments in those sectors, and I'll address that second point shortly, so that the areas and those developments can be self-sufficient. This comes back onto the point to state that it doesn't help just putting pumps and tanks and internal hydrants into the facility. Actually having hoses and nozzles and knowledge and understanding on how to utilize those equipments available to those areas are just as important. So whereby the supply from municipality is not sufficient to meet the requirements, it does fall on the shoulders of the developers or the building owners, as a lack of a better term, to protect their own assets. In terms of the second question, the maintenance, maintaining these units are important. You've spent millions of rands investing in pumps and the infrastructure in terms of protecting that asset. There needs to be a collaboration between those government schools and potentially knowledgeable people within other government agencies to be able to assist you with maintaining it. It was a point I raised in my presentation, was the collaboration between different entities are lacking. It's a universal problem I've experienced over the last few years. I don't have a direct answer for you, but my question is reach out to the local fire department as close as possible to you and find out do they not have somebody that's knowledgeable that can understand on how to maintain these units, at least from an overview perspective. As TT highlighted, there's a difference between in-depth maintenance and just being able to make sure that the things that need to be looked at are there. Is there fuel inside the pump? Is it regularly checked? Are the filters cleaned out? In the case of hydrants, is the seal in the front, that little outlet seal, is it perished? Is it replaced? These are things you can do without really much difficulties. So that's just my answer to that.
In addition to maintenance and water, I think we should start with the prevention part of this. We should start to make sure that our buildings are fire safe. Normally, that is where our fire safety inspections comes in. So you need to make sure your building is safe so that there will not be a fire. That's what we always advocate, to say prevention is better than response. If you make sure your building is fire safe, and there's no reason, but eventually a fire will occur, but if there's a reason for that fire to happen, it's either electrical, because your electrical maintenance wasn't done properly, or it's housekeeping. There's also always a purpose or a reason why a fire occurred. If we can eliminate that part and focus on that part, having fire water available, it's just not a nice to have, you will always have that needed. But I think what we need to do is make sure that our buildings are fire safe. Make sure that we have proper housekeeping and we follow the rules and regulations in terms of fire prevention and fire safety. Thank you.
Lately, and then Marius.
I think what can aid also with regards to schools, we need to look at how the structure of the school actually is. All right? You get your Model C schools that actually have what they call building control officers, right, or facility managers. And that is where the lack actually comes for fire prevention measures that's actually or need to be upkeep or maintained are actually being neglected. The principal will never, that will be one of his last things on his mind for a service company to come in and on a yearly basis service those units, especially in rural areas, all right? Because suburban types of schools will have control over the situations. It comes to where there's medium schools in this, Section 25 schools, which falls under the Department of Education, where they actually take over financial control over a certain school that have like low school fees that needs to be paid or can be paid, whatever the case may be. You do not have these problems in King Edward School or whatever the case may be. It's more the local and informal settlement schools that do not have somebody in the capacity as for a building control officer or facility manager that can look after these things as well. I mean, having a 40 mil water supply into a school, that's already showing me that that school was under-designed with regards to the water layout of supply. I mean, there is toilets that needs to run, sewage needs to be run, right? That actually looks more like a commercial diameter rather than a water supply. So if the school is actually under design, which means it will not actually have the proper flow for firefighting in the specific school. So we also need to look from an additional design point of view, who was responsible for signing off the additional design? Because you cannot actually have a fire protection plan approved with a low flow rate like that. It cannot actually happen. We have hydrants and house rules to actually capacitate that school. And it also comes down to schools that actually have more container type of building infrastructure. Those things are much more flammable is a big argument, because that is actually now overpopulated schools, and these types of infrastructures are actually brought in, and that alone also is much more this quick space type of classrooms. They are also flammable. They are always flammable because they insulated. Some of them actually have good fire rating resistance, but I think water supplies should actually, because there's an increase in infrastructure at specific schools, especially in informal settlements.
Thank you. And Marius? Thank you. I'm going to take one or two little liberties. It was interesting for me this morning as I said hello to some of you. I've been running around a bit, but it's like we're having a bit of a FPASA reunion. It's good to, Lindley, you reminded me of that now. So I went to what I'll be calling the hashtag Tanya's Picasso. So we have some, I think, very good points that's coming out, very good discussions. One of the things that I wanted us to think about as we go forward is what the different sets of rules mean and where are they supposed to work, so that when you engage with us or where you want to engage directly with the Red Book or whichever one of those standards, I'll give you my take on it, and then you can think on that and we can have discussions and build on this. So your Red Book is very much meant to take care of that pinkish thing at the bottom. I know Tanya has another color for it, but from where I'm standing, so that's the public supply part, the hydrant in the street. SANS 10400 part T and part W goes to the yellowish thing. Okay. So there will be differences between those two. Now we engage with SANS 10090, which might be the place where we clarify some of the direct contradictions, etc., etc. Because SANS 10090, with the title Community Protection Against Fire, was originally written to provide fire services with something to latch onto. So after the water engineer put together whatever they're going to put in the street, hopefully they spoke with the fire chief, then we look at flows and pressures to put out a certain size of fire. That's why you have very direct contradictions between flows and pressures. The municipal supply, the private supply, fire service pitches up, and those very high flow rates that you saw in 10090 is what the firefighter needs to indicate that they can get control of the fire. So that gets made up. The 10090 flow rates gets made up municipal supply, plus the private supply, plus operational supply. Do I bring tanks, etc.? That's my take on it. And I wanted to mention that. So as we move forward to what do we do about all of this after today? Even though some of our presentations have gone a bit quicker, we have to think about what do we do about the water supply. That you put that in your thinking cap, you talk back to us, you talk to the SABS, etc., wherever we need to, so that we can get clear way to go forward. And just by the way, if you think about what Etienne said earlier this morning, if we can go for high pressure firefighting solutions, very, very little water is now necessary. And is 10090 even relevant anymore? I can't think that we can go for high pressure type solutions in our fire hose reels, which is a first aid piece of equipment, but certainly from a firefighter point of view, the equipment that we put on the road, we might be able to bring those very high flows that we indicate, we might be able to bring those requirements down for areas with that capability. And therein lies the next challenge. Disaster management, everybody is talking about, we are not the same everywhere. So we can't write one rule that says a fire truck will be at my front door in 6 minutes. Because my front door might be in Cook and Arp on my Plaas, which I'm not leaving for America. I'm happy where I am. And then, 30 minutes is the closest vet to me, never mind the closest fire service. So we're going to have to think very clearly for the written proposed solutions for the South African condition, because we have inner city New York in one area, and then we've got our own outback in other areas. Thank you.
No, thanks, Marius. I think that helps a lot. So it's about a differentiated approach, which I think is critical in the production of regulations and related systems. You mustn't lose sight of that. You have Namakwa, where a fire truck may have to be on the road for 100 kilos to a fire. So if you define the minimum requirements without being alive to that, when they see the standard, it's completely irrelevant to them because it's not talking to them. It's not possible for them to meet it. So I think that's something that Marius is putting across. I noted a few things that I thought I would flag if the conversation was not sustaining itself, but there's no need for that now. I will raise two issues as we wrap. I think the issue that you raised, Tanya, regarding the experience that we were all subjected to now with the rainwater maintenance and the effect it has on water for fire protection. I think it's something that we must think about a bit more deeply. And I think it relates to your point around the use of drinkable water for firefighting. Given the challenges that our country faces, for how long are we going to sustain that particular approach? What are the other options that are there? I think that's something that we need to think about. And of course, it talks to issues around access by legal operators of hydrants and so on. Also there, close to where I live, I see people taking water from a hydrant all the time. And obviously, if it was not drinkable, maybe they wouldn't take it if they were aware. So that's one element that I think it's a new problem that we need to also think about. Then the other issue which I think we need to also think about is the institutional split in relation to hydrant maintenance between fire and water services. I think that's also something that needs to be thought about more carefully, because when all is said and done, a municipality is a single entity. The departments that are there are designed for administrative and coordination purpose, but the municipality, City of Tshwane is one entity. If you take the city to court, yes, you will have Tanya representing fire, you can have somebody representing, but you are taking the city. And I think we need innovation, TT, in relation to hybriding this maintenance by bringing those that are responsible from fire and water closer together. So that you don't have, because it's also expensive that Lloyd goes to a hydrant and then he identifies a problem that must be solved by ATM. And we're complaining about funding as municipalities. So I think we need to think out of the box, and that's where private sector insurers can come in to try and help test and pilot different ways of doing this, because it can't be visited by two people. Is the argument that during my time as a disaster practitioner that I had, that if you walk into a household and you want to teach somebody about fire, you must teach them about flooding as well. Because unless if you want them to be saved from a fire but die from something else. So it has to be integrated so that the opportunity to get to this household you might not have again. It might be the only opportunity that you have. So I think that's something that I know is breaking boundaries, but we need to think about it, because you will have, if you have a longer intervening period between the fire department saying there's a problem with this hydrant and the fire and the water services going there, and you have a fire in between, what happens? That means that a hydrant that could have been fixed had not been fixed because it was waiting for Atterbury to come from water services. Whereas this person that gets to eat could have done something there and there. Because I think it's something that we need to think about. Even if it's piloted in a small scale, TT, somewhere where you have a team of 633 that does it, and you see whether you are able to integrate that seamlessly. Because the fact that there will be this, doing this, and then identifying these errors for the next one, but all these people are on the payroll of the same employer. I think that's something that needs to be thought about. Innovatively, we probably need to think about also technology. Earlier, I spoke to Etienne about, having a much more deeper conversation around the role of technology in fire services, perhaps in the new year. So that's something that maybe we need to think about. But other than that, if there are no other questions, I think that should have been enough to get us to lunch. We only are now 4 past, so you can give us direction in relation to how it works. If there are tickets for people, you must articulate all those things.
Thank you very much. No, there aren't tickets. Hello, Lloyd. Yeah, question, Lloyd, you have a question. I'm not very good with sign language and lip reading, but this one worked out. Yes, Lloyd.
Okay, no, thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Marius. It's not a question. I was just listening. I didn't want to cry in the wrong funeral. So I was listening. So I was just checking, because now I think Sean and Tanya, their presentation is good, but it focuses on more developed environment. So looking at the more rural municipalities. Last year we opened, it is a mall, but it's a shopping center, but for that community it's a mall at Donald. So when we were building it, with the developer and the engineers, because in that area, because water is scarce in South Africa, in that area, the community knows that they will stay 3 days without water, because now it's pumped to another area. Around 3 days is pumped to another area. So it's normal for them. So when we're planning to build that shopping center, and then we sit down and we say, okay, what can we do? And then we improvise. Dr. K was talking about the white paper that we referred to those standards and, you know, but when you go deeper to more rural, you can, but it's difficult because there's no capacity, there's no, I wouldn't say knowledgeable people there, but you'll find that in regard to fire and safety and prevention, it is not a priority because it seems we are more reactive than proactive. So these are the things, because if the principals will more proactive when something had happened, and they will start saying, and after we have dealt with that, they forget again. So what I'm saying, because you said it's in for review, 10900. So we need to check that not one size fits all. If you're sitting somewhere deciding or drafting something, you must know that a person staying right in Mafufumbe is not, cannot be assisted. Or in other municipalities or in other areas within South Africa, there is no that capability maybe to implement those standards. We refer, we quote it, but it is difficult, and also the enforcement part of it, when you are looking at the municipal bylaws. You can have a nice bylaw, but to implement it because you don't have capacity are the things that also when we look, and we can look at it. But maybe my plea, maybe in the next Infire, just invite the person who is more at the rural, also to come and present like Dr. Titi have done, so that at least we can have a question to say, in the cities, they do this, but in the more rural, this is what is happening. And they survive with what they improvise there. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks, Chief. Okay, good. It's lunchtime. We've run about 10 minutes over, so our program says we're coming back 1:45. Our one sponsor speaker also indicated that they can't make it, so there's another 10 minutes that we're winning there. I'm going to ask that we all be back here at 1 o'clock after the lunch. No tickets or anything. As you go past the restrooms, up the stairs, just turn to the right. I think they call it the pavilion or something like that, but it's just around the corner. The food's not far from here. Carl looks like he knows where it is. He'll take us all there. See you all just after lunch, 1 o'clock. let's see, hopefully.
Are you preparing the next presentation?
Yes.
Oh, this is the one by
Radan.
okay. Let's call him. Yeah, let's settle down. We have a few more items to deal with. Essentially, we left with Pradhan and then DN, and then that's the panel discussion. So that's where we are sitting. So we have saved time, and we don't want to, waste it now that we have saved it. And then because we have time and we have already dealt with Tanya's presentation, Dr. Titi, we're going to bring Sean back for 5 minutes. There was something he wanted to share that he couldn't share, but we do have time because if you recall at the tail end of our discussion, we spoke about the use of non-potable water for firefighting. And he says that there's some work that the City of Cape Town is doing that he wants to just share with us in that regard. So we'll call Pradhan Moodley and then we'll have, let's start with you. Let's start with you, Pradhan. Drink your water. Let's start with Sean. It's taking 5 minutes just to, we want this idea to be watered because we think there is something that will work in the future. Just for 5 or so minutes. We do have time, so I don't stress a lot.
Thank you very much. So we were having a very informal discussion and the topic came up. It relates very much to the discussions we've had around the water supply. Now, as Dr. Tanya mentioned, at the moment we're utilizing potable or for a layman term, drinking water as part of our firefighting operations and have done so for as long as we've been doing it. But the City of Cape Town has started piloting a potential project on looking at utilizing non-potable or grey water or repurposed water in order to use that as part of their fire ring main. And they're busy looking at the implementation and the implications of doing that, because they also experience the same problems we do in Johannesburg and the rest of our countries, is the theft of water through fire hydrant lines. It is the tapping off of these fire lines into domestic residents. We touched briefly on funding challenges for local authorities. The City of Joburg's water department have got a above 50% unaccounted for water bill, which means more than half of their water that they're drawing from their reservoirs are going missing through aged infrastructure, through hydrants, through illegal connections. So on that note, it's something to maybe consider, and asking the question out to the relevant stakeholders is, would there be any value or ideas of implementing non-potable water firefighting measures as a way going forward, especially in rural areas where you can draw on that grey water or draw on that non-drinking water as a more effective way of firefighting. So thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, okay, yeah, let's take a question.
My question is more an observation. We've successfully implemented systems like this. There's a law not far from here called England. It's a kind of a rural law. Basically what we did is we took the effective fire capacity and I think my voice was loud enough, but okay. Oh, sorry. So there's a mall that we use this for called Denlin. It's for Safari Investments, one of our clients. and we had a long discussions with the fire engineer of how can we actually do a combined tank system, because we're a water specialist company, so we work hand in hand with all the fire specialists on how this can actually work and how it's feasible, because the moment that there's no water, everybody suffers. So what we actually did is we remained compliant by having 2 separate tanks. And then what we did in the one tank is we added an additional buffer layer so that you can still have your effective capacity on both tanks. And then at the buffer layer on the one side, we had a raw water collection where we would collect borehole water or groundwater into the one tank, and then we would filter it and treat it for potable water in another tank. So basically, you will increase your clients, not only their fire capacity, but you will actually start to give them a bit of an ROI on their fire backup, which has never been the case so far. So we've actually taken what's normally seen as a grudge buy and actually given them a way that it can be reused, filtered water, backup water, all of these things combined. And there's many ways you can do it. You can introduce rainwater, you can do grey water. We've seen all of it, and we're actually implementing it on a few projects.
Thank you. Yeah, so Marius and the team, there's the challenge for you. We don't necessarily need to still have water supply as a theme next year, but let's pick up on this conversation, even if it's a showcase of what the City of Cape Town is doing, so that we start to, and what the colleague was also saying. So I think we can no longer afford to move from one theme to the other without picking up critical aspects that may be helpful in shaping what needs to be done going forward. So thanks for that. We're gonna give Pradhan Moodley from NASCA Control Solutions, NASCA, let me call it NASCA. Because with an abbreviation, it could look like it's a political party. So let me say NASCA, because otherwise I will throw you under the bus. So Moodley has over half a decade in fire and safety industry. He's been involved in supply and implementation of fire protection systems, strong focus on ensuring reliable firefighting equipment. His experience ranges from compliance standards, system logistics, and real-world application. I'm going to quote this, there's a hash before it. So I speak from a place grounded in both technical knowledge and operational reality. That's Pradhan for you.
Afternoon, everyone. Thanks for that introduction. Today I'm going to be speaking about the production of reconditioned firefighting equipment. This South African national standard specifies the procedures that apply to the effective reconditioning of fire hose reels and hydrants. Fire hose reels are considered a major first aid article for commercial and industrial applications, while fire hydrants enable firefighters to tap into municipal water supplies during emergencies. The standard aims to provide a sound maintenance system, ensuring these critical safety devices are always readily available, usable, and in sound operating condition. This document is referenced in the Occupational Health and Safety Act and supersedes the previous edition, which was SANS 1475 to 2010. The scope and normative references. Scope. The part of SANS 1475 specifies the procedures that apply to the effective reconditioning of fire hose reels and hydrants. It does not cover the supply or installation of these devices. A security seal is an item usually a plastic pull-tight or wire and lead seal, easily broken, that applied to fire hose reels and above ground hydrants. to show they are fully operational readiness and are not tampering of work conducted has occurred. With hose reel sealing, using an acceptable security seal, the hose reel shall be sealed in the manner that prevents use without breaking the seal. The seal should break on half a rotation of the inlet stop valve, handle, or hand wheel, and should only require the force exerted by a single hand. With hydrant sealing, hydrants must be sealed in a manner that prevents use without breaking the seal. For tamper-proof hydrants, seal in the way that prevents the key from being inserted without breaking the seal. The water supply requirements. 300 kPa is your minimum pressure. Required static water pressure for all equipment. If there's no water, equipment with no water flow must be marked. The owner's responsibility is 100% ensuring adequate water supply is user's duty. Fire hose reels and hydrants with no water at the time of maintenance shall not be maintained and shall be indelibly marked no water. Recorded and reported in writing to the owner or user. The owner or user shall ensure that the firefighting water supply meets the minimum static water pressure requirement of 300 kPa in accordance to SANS 10105-2. When it comes to marking and maintenance labels, the required information, name, address, and contact number of the reconditioning organization. Initials of the competent person, date of maintenance, next maintenance due date, and the static water pressure at time of maintenance. This requires to hydrants only. The label positioning. Fire hose reels require 2 labels, one on the outside of the front disc and the other visible when fully unwound. Hydrants require 1 label positioning near the device on the supply pipe, wall, or structure. Underground hydrants need 1 label on the inside of the enclosure, on a nearby wall, or on the located indicated marker. The reconditioning records. The required information. The reconditioning organization must provide the user with a record containing the name of the user, date of maintenance, next maintenance due date, and the location of the equipment. The non-conformance record. The reconditioning organization shall keep records of all non-conformance and unresolved issues reported to the customer. Record retention. Both the reconditioning organization and the user must retain these records for at least 5 years. The organization must keep proof of providing these records to the user. The summary of this. This standard established 5 critical requirements for firefighting equipment. Proper specifications, minimum performance standards, security provisions, compliance documents, and equipment integrity verification. The proper specifications. All reconditioned firefighting equipment must meet the dimensional, material, and functional specifications as outlined in the relevant Australian standards. The minimum performance standards. Equipment must constantly perform to establish minimum standards for water, water flow, pressure testing, and operational functionality to ensure reliable performance during emergencies. Security provisions. Appropriate security sealing measures must be implemented to indicate equipment readiness and prevent unauthorized tampering while ensuring easy access during emergencies. Compliance documentation. Comprehensive maintenance records and appropriate labeling must be maintained for all reconditioned equipment, documenting testing dates, procedures, and technical details. equipment integrity verification. Require a regular inspection and testing protocols must be followed to verify the ongoing integrity and serviceability of all firefighting equipment throughout its operational life cycle. Adherence to these requirements ensure that reconditioned firefighting equipment remains reliable, functional, and ready for immediate deployment in emergency situations. Thank you for your time and your commitment to the standard, and I hope we all learn something when it comes to the 1475 and maintenance. Thank you. Thank you.
Let's take 2 or 3 questions for him. Any questions for Pradhan?
Quick one. I heard him talking about minimum pressure, 300 kPa static pressure on the fire hydrant. Now, I just need clarity. Is it minimum 300 kPa static pressure or flow pressure? Thank you.
Any more? If there are any questions? Okay, we have that one. Let's deal with that, Pradhan.
The standard talks about the static pressure.
Are you ready? Oh, he's already here. Okay. No, thanks. We are essentially gonna be taking the last presenter for the day, and then we have a discussion, and then we wrap. So it's evident that we will finish earlier than was planned originally. But allow me to introduce the next speaker, Diane Bezedenhout, who works for Hollard Insurance. She's the head of ESG at Hollard Insurance, a leader in life and non-life insurance in South Africa. She has held this position since 2023 July, having worked for Hollard since 2009 as an actuarial analyst. I was going to say actuarial scientist, but I'm going to get to that. She started out as an actuarial analyst, which provided her with a solid foundation in risk assessment and financial analysis. Then she moved on to be head of product development for over 6 years, where she led various product initiatives. She holds a BSc Honours in Actuarial Science from the University of Wits in Johannesburg, and is a fellow of the Actuarial Society of South Africa. She's also a qualified coach through Consciousness Coaching International, and she uses these skills to coach and empower others, employees in particular at Hollard. She's based in Johannesburg. She's committed to driving positive change and meaningful impact in the country through the insurance industry. Diane, the floor is yours. Let's give her 30 minutes to talk to us about their initiative, the City of Tshwane. You're welcome, Diane.
Thanks, Moses. As Moses was reading my bio, I realized maybe it wasn't a very appropriate bio for this sort of audience. So I clearly don't have a background in fire, but as we go through the presentation, there'll be an understanding of why fire safety is important to me and my role. So I think maybe as a start, let me just talk to Hollard. I'm sure most of you know who Hollard is, but just quickly. So we were established in 1980. We are a privately owned company with some shareholding by Tokyo Marine in Japan. We have both short-term and life licenses and sell pretty much any sort of insurance product or investment product you can think of. And we have over 3,500 Hollardites and a level 1 BE contributor. In the center is our purpose. So in summary, basically, we really just want to enable and create better futures for all. And that really isn't just about our policyholders, our customers, but also everyone we engage with. So our suppliers, our employees, our partners, so partners sitting in this room. So how do we really create a better future for all and have an impact on society? And then that brings me to the third diagram, which is what we define as shared values. So in the center is the purple heart, which is what where the three circles come together, and that's what shared value means to us. So it's where focused competitiveness, meaningful impact, and enabling culture come together. So that's that sweet spot where it comes together. So what does that mean? So it means everything we do needs to ultimately, obviously, us as an insurer, so we need to be competitive, but at the same time, we want to have a positive impact on society and the environment, but do it in a way that's with care and dignity and inclusive. So we have several shared value focus areas, and one of our focus areas is around risk reduction, and that's where fire safety comes in. So it's very clear that fires, motor accidents, crimes, flooding all impact insurers. And I guess the question we're asking ourselves, or have been asking ourselves, is what part can we play to improve fire safety, road safety, crime safety, and flood safety? So this is one of the initiatives that we're involved in. We're involved in several different initiatives with partners like Moses from Santam and Richard from OMI. But one of the initiatives that we're running is the fire hydrant initiative. So I actually don't think I even need to go through this slide. Oh, there we go. Because I think it's all clear. It's clear to everyone what the fire problem is in our country and the needs and the gaps that we have. But this initiative really came about when the white paper was established, and there was a need for collective industry action on fire risk reduction. So at that point, in 2019, we began the journey to launch an effective, proactive response to this call to action. And in line with our purpose, which I've spoken to, the aim was to deliver a win-win-win for government, society, and Hollard. So as a start, or as a pilot, we looked at Coega municipality. The National Disaster Management Center suggested that we start with this municipality because it's quite small and quite well run, and it would be a good start to test the initiative. So we partnered with them, and we trained unemployed youth to inspect fire hydrants and ensure that they're functional. The pilot was 3 months, and during this pilot, the youth captured photos of the hydrants, the GPS coordinates, and then what type of hydrant it is on a digital app that we developed for this initiative specifically. Sorry, actually, as I'm talking, I realized I didn't mention, so I know Tanya presented already, and unfortunately I stepped out for a meeting during that time. So I'm really sorry if I repeat anything that Tanya has already said, but hopefully not. So during the initiative, they also cleaned the hydrants, they painted and marked the hydrants, and tested the water flow and pressure. And then any defective hydrants were identified and sent to the team to repair. So the main outcomes of the pilot was that we employed and trained 9 unemployed youth living in that area, and then all 745 fire hydrants were inspected in that area and basic maintenance performed. A comprehensive database was also created with these fire hydrants, including the GPS coordinates, data for each hydrant, which the municipality could then therefore use afterwards. So given the success of that, we then looked to where we could expand, which is the next municipality to expand to, and then that's when we partnered with the city of Tshwane. And in 2022, we launched the first 12-month program. Actually, it was initially 6 months and then extended to another 6 months, where we inspected fire hydrants, and we employed 15 youth at that stage. And 6,284 hydrants were inspected, with 428 identified as defective, and I think most were repaired subsequent to that. Then in 2023, we decided to relook at the program a little bit and rather run it through the YES program, which is a youth employment services, which Hollard is very involved in, and we support it. And then at that point, because the whole idea of YES, the YES program is to upskill and develop youth to enable them to gain employment post the program, we really looked at the program, what else can we incorporate in it? So it's not just inspecting hydrants, but also equipping them with skills. So we expanded the initiative to also train them on fire safety. And then also as part of that expanding the initiative, we also then sent the youth out to do sessions with the community to educate them on fire safety. So at that point, we had 32 youth and 1,734 hydrants were inspected. So even though we doubled in the number of youth, you'll see the number of hydrants inspected decreased quite drastically, but that's because we then incorporated the learning element into the program. However, this year, so we're currently in this last cohort where we have 8 youth. We're currently sitting on 2,500 hydrants inspected. So we've tried to, this year, balance it a bit more so that we can do more inspection of fire hydrants. Then the app that I spoke to, so these are just pictures of what the app looks like. It's pretty simple to use. The students use the app on their own phone. We provide them with data. At each fire hydrant, they take pictures of it, the GPS location. Is it obstructed? Is it easily accessible? Does the hydrant have rust, etc.? And then that's captured on the app and then in a database so that you can have a full picture, a full map of all the hydrants that have been inspected. Okay, now it's time to play the video, Marius. I think, yeah, just to be safe. Oh, it's on. Why can't I see it?
Because it's...
Oh, on the side.
What happened to the sound? Not there.
I know.
Okay.
It was working earlier.
All right. Let's go for the alternative. Bring me a mic, please. We'll start the video again.
Do I just do that?
There you go. And then
Play.
down a little bit for the play.
Oh, it was working so nicely earlier.
Yeah.
In the event of a fire, we should be able to intervene rapidly with our emergency services. And when combating a fire, our emergency services need a very quick and close source of water. And obviously, the sooner we can extinguish the fire, we will be able to save not only goods and property, but most importantly, we could be saving lives.
Some people see the fire hydrants as a source of water for them to use, not knowing that this is for firefighting only. And in so doing, they configure the fire hydrant heads. And when we arrive at incidents, we are unable to connect because the fire hydrant head has been changed.
Over the years, the insurance industry has suffered billions of rands of losses as a result of what could be a small fire, and because of a non-operational fire hydrant, it cost us millions of rands over the year.
The city has got about plus minus 25,000 fire hydrants, and it must be maintained once annually. But because of resources, we are unable to get to that point.
And that's where the private sector come in. In this instance, we are partnering with Hollard to assist us in maintaining our fire hydrants.
The advantage of this partnership is that Hollard is actually funding the program, and it also comes with employment for their youth.
Growing up, I always wanted to be a role model, a leader in my community. So when I saw that this initiative is all about community development and it's all about equipping young people, it's all about enhancing their skills, then that made me really, really excited.
This has made an impact in my life in a huge way, a way that I couldn't expect. This has taught me a lot of life lessons, and I will take back home and also teach my younger brothers and sisters.
It has opened many doors for me. I have learned a lot
To see government and Holland working together makes me feel excited to be young. To see the public-private partners growing in this country, creating jobs, is a great initiative.
With the funds available, we were able to have all these young people going out and inspecting a number of the fire hydrants to make sure that they are in good working condition.
They're also being repainted, so the visibility at night has also increased, and there's also an increased awareness where people now are starting to take the initiative of protecting fire hydrants because now they understand the purpose of that fire hydrant.
So at the end of the day, we will have more well-functioning fire hydrants available that the emergency services will be able to use in the event of an emergency.
As we know, not all heroes wear caps, but then some heroes carry paint brushes and they paint hydrants.
I'll go back to this one, sorry.
All right, let's get the... yes.
Cool, thanks. Okay, so I think that was a nice picture of what we're doing out there on the ground. So just to close off on the last two slides. And now. Sorry, don't know what's happening here.
My computer is being a bit of a... Let's just go back to...
Sorry.
Yeah, just pause for a second. We'll get this now.
Okay, so during the last few years, there have been a few challenges. The first one is around measuring the impact of the initiative. So with the projects and initiatives that we run in my space, we really try to look at what is the financial, social, environmental impact of the different initiatives that we run, so we can also see what our return on investment is. So this one's been a bit tricky from a financial impact perspective, because ultimately what we want to find out is how many properties were saved or damage reduced because hydrants were inspected and then defective hydrants were identified and then subsequently repaired. So what would have happened had it not been repaired? So I guess trying to figure out what that looks like hasn't been an easy task. So that's one of our challenges that we've had. The second one is around sustainability. So, I mean, this initiative is running because we're funding it, but how do we create something that's more sustainable, that's not going to depend on Hollard in the long term to make happen? And I guess this was alluded to earlier around how do we work, and maybe this comes in with a separate initiative that we're doing with Suntime and OMI around supporting fire services to help, I guess, influence policies to make funding available to the fire services. Then the last one is around employment. So like I mentioned with the youth YES program, we really want to try and equip the youth to find employment post the 12-month program. This isn't always easy. So, I mean, the municipality obviously can't or doesn't have the capacity to absorb the youth post the program, or at least not many. And there aren't always opportunities elsewhere in the fire space. Hollard have employed some of these youth in our risk improvement team, but unfortunately not all. So that is one of the challenges that we have. Then in closing, so I would say from I guess the three main things that we've summarized this to is firstly our commitment to safety. So like I mentioned, we do other initiatives around road safety, flooding, crime. But when it comes to crime safety, to fire safety, we really are committed to finding ways to support fire services, organizations like IFPASA. How do we come together to make a difference and have an impact? And then that then leads into strong partnerships, which really is the backbone of Hollard since we began in 1980. So how do we work with other insurers, with other organizations, with government to scale initiatives to really be effective and impactful with the different initiatives that we run? And then linking back to our shared value model, really, I guess working with the different stakeholders and ultimately having an impact. And that's it. Thanks.
Thanks, Diane. Great work. Don't go. There are going to be some questions. You can sit there. Questions? Any reflections on what Diane has indicated? We spoke about hydrant maintenance. We spoke about collaboration. This was collaboration in action, where the city of Tshwane, together with Hollard, were collaborating to actually maintain hydrants. So, can we get some of your thoughts from Pam, one, then we'll pick up the others. I can go there. Yeah, proceed. Or did they take your mic? What was the broken?
Thanks, Diane. I've got a question, but we can take it offline if you're not able to answer. So I heard a number of 25,000 fire hydrants, and I know the program has been going on for a while. I don't know if you can share that of those 25,000, percentage-wise, how are we looking from a flow and pressure perspective, meaning it's ready for use to firefighting purposes? Thanks.
So I learned something new today, that apparently the number isn't 25,000. Tanya has said it's more like 180,000. So compared to the numbers that are shared, we are not close to getting through everything. So we've got a lot more work, I think. We've already made plans with Tanya to go out soon and actually look at the model, I guess, the program, and how can we scale it even further and reach further. So yeah, still lots to do in summary.
Okay, no, thanks for that. Okay, let's get another question at the back.
Hi, Dan. I just want to ask if are there any intentions to roll out this good project of yours to the city of Joburg?
We would love to. So we were chatting earlier that at that stage, what is it now, Tolani? Like a year or two ago, no, even probably 2 years ago, we did try and engage with several stakeholders in city of Joburg. Actually, one of my colleagues had a meeting, I'm not sure if it was at your offices or where it was, but we didn't succeed. So very, very happy to open the discussion and see how we can collaborate and extend it further.
Okay, thank you. This side, what are your questions? Etienne? The only person I could point without raising a hand was Etienne, so that's why he's already deciding to raise his hand.
Yeah, thank you, Moses. Thank you for always recognizing me. Daniel, just a question. How do you identify the hydrants or the areas? Is it risk-based? Is it just randomly? How's the selection done and which hydrants should be maintained or inspected? Is it based on risk or just in general?
I feel like I need to redirect that question either to Tanya or Tsalani. Do either of you have an answer for that? Can I?
So when we started off,
Taurani, you must wait for the mic. You don't have what it takes to talk without a mic.
Thank you. I'm Taulani from Harlem. So just in reference to Kennedy's presentation earlier, where he actually had different categories from A to D, or to E, I'm not sure. But when we started off with category A because that's where the highest risk as an insurer was. When we were done with that, which was in Region 3, Tanya can confirm, when that area was done, then we started moving off to the other categories. Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Taurani. Any more? Yeah, this time we're getting questions. Yeah, it's.
Good afternoon, all. As a follow-on question on that was asked regarding the scope of work when hydrants are tested, the lady who asked the question initially wanted to know if we do test the flows and pressure. What we saw there were the numbers of the units that were tested. However, we didn't see the results of the flow and pressure tests. So just to find out if that is done when they are testing, because that's crucial. To get the numbers is one thing, but to see whether the hydrants meet the required standard, that's something else which is critical. And also, when we do this sampling, the statistics that we obtain, can we safely say when we are done with the testing that it represents at least all the areas of Tshwane, which means that we don't just test in one area of Tshwane, but we look at various areas so that we can use these statistics, even if PASA can use it and say, these are the statistics. We did random sampling, but we did cover as far as maybe the other areas close to, and for the borders of Tshwane and interior of Tshwane. Thank you.
Sorry, I know I'm throwing a hot potato here, but Tolani's the brains behind this, so I'm going to pass it on to her again.
Thank you for that question. So regarding the first question regarding testing the flow and pressure, yes, the youth are required to test that and record those results on the app. And in terms of reach, Tanya can assist, but at the moment we've been focusing on Region 3. Some areas are in the outskirts, but we are looking at reaching those rural areas that are not regularly tested annually. So that's the plan.
Okay. There's a hand from Pam.
Thanks. This is not really a question to Deanne, because I think it would be unfair to ask her that. But the question is about other provinces, because I know City of Cape Town did a similar mapping, testing flow and pressure, and in the GPS location of where that hydrant is. Does anybody in the room have or know of what's in that project, or what results emanated from that? Maybe somebody from the other municipalities or City of Tshwane themselves, in terms of sharing of information between provinces. Thanks.
Okay, Kennedy. So okay, speak first.
Thank you. I know of one municipality, but with the NDA that we have with municipalities, I did get permission from this particular chief that I can talk about his municipality, and this is Victor Kanye in Delmas. They are largely funded by the local mining community. So they get the geomapping equipment that registers both flow and pressure, and we will be making that available on our website soon as we update it, just to see how that works out. But there's a particular device that they use that gives out flow and pressure and geolocation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Braloid.
Thank you, Ramos, Chair. Now, in fact, I just wanted to echo what Ms. Pam was asking in regard to what about other provinces. I think as, I forgot the name, when you're presenting, I think it goes with the collaboration and accepting the proposals as municipalities, as a province. I'm saying that because I was part of it when we were dealing with Kocha and even with City of Tshwane. So if the insurance company knock at the door and then the leaders within the municipality, they're not accepting to listen and to say, we accept that, I think that's the problem. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thanks. I was going to, indicate that I was actually also involved in this because I worked for Cocta then and helped conceptualize. So I could help answer some of the questions, but the point that he's raising relates to what if you want to implement in another space. The next question is the space receptive to implementation? As a matter of fact, their original intention was to implement elsewhere. And I, in my role as the head of fire services then, facilitated unsuccessfully. Then we uprooted the initiative from there to the City of Tshwane. So there is that dynamic around local authorities, some of them not seeing the value of collaboration and partnerships. They may have reasons. We implement programs as Santam, we support lots of municipalities, so we also know that there are spaces where you try and support and you move on to support the next one. And usually those that reject support needs it most. But it is a reality of our lives that not everybody is keen to embrace support. And talking about embracing support talks to those points that you had on your last point, sustainability. Because if you implement a program where there's ownership by the city, it's likely that beyond your support, they will sustain the program. And that is the biggest issue that you deal with, because you don't want success for 2 months and then you're gone, everything collapses. So it also means that selection must be very focused, so that you select the one with the most capacity to sustain, own up, co-fund, da-da-da-da. And unfortunately, of the 257 municipalities, the bulk of them, you struggle. And I'm talking now as Santam, but I know the same struggle that Hollard went through because I was involved in their initiative whilst I work for government. So that is something very, very critical to say we need to inculcate a spirit of collaboration. I don't know whether it must be done, Tanya, at TUT, when people are taught fire technology and are told a module that says that for you to execute your mandate effectively, you have to work with others, especially because municipal resources are shrinking and the risks are growing. So you actually have a situation where your resources are becoming smaller, but what you must solve is becoming bigger. But you still have people in that mindset where they say, no, it's my mandate. Not realizing that when fires manifest, they affect livelihoods, they affect economies, people get retrenched, and so on and so forth. So I do think that that's something that still remains a nagging issue around who to collaborate with. And the other issue is the issue of scale. You start small. If City of Tshwane, I was hearing earlier in the morning when Dr. Titi was saying, they don't have 25,000 either. I think they have 108 or 200,000. But you go and maintain 10,000 in order to test whether the model that you are implementing works, so that others can also pick it up. So if the model works in the CBD of Tshwane, which is Region 3, and somebody wants to replicate in Main Lane and Pretoria East, which is Region 6, then they can use the same model. So I think for me, it's not so much that you must bite a lot. Whatever you bite, even if it's small, as long as you are able to test whether the model works, whether you are able to achieve the desired outcomes, whether the city is able to see the value, so that when others come, when you get to a point where you have a critical mass of partners, then you clean more hydrants. Then with that critical mass and the experience that you get in one city, you can go to Lloyd's area, where maybe there's 200 hydrants because it's a more rural area. But you go there with experience and you are able to navigate those instances. So I do think that the biggest issue that we have seen from our side is that some cities are just not pro-collaboration. Even if you start collaborating, there's just the mindset, there's just no energy to collaborate. And I didn't want to take the thunder out of your response.
I couldn't have said it better, so yes. Here we go.
So that's where we are. And I think we need to encourage SALGA. Unfortunately, the SALGA colleague had a meeting to attend to. But these are the issues that needs to be mainstreamed in conversations, to say, seeing that we know, earlier we spoke about fire services funding, and we know the situation there. There will be positive change, but it may take another few years. But you find that partners are willing to chip in and do certain things, but they have to drag municipalities along. And not only small municipalities, by the way, even big, even metros. There are metros where you struggle. You go to them, you say, we want to collaborate, then they duck and dive. You see, so there are issues. I know that historically there's trust deficit between government and private sector, but we need to outgrow it because the situation that we face is forcing us to collaborate in order to sustain economies, to sustain businesses, and to protect livelihoods and communities. We need to outgrow this trust deficit issue, you know, and learn to work with each other. And what we have learned is that when we work with others and you are transparent about what you want to do, then you engender trust. Over time, people start to open up because there's also, like Kennedy was saying, there's also this issue around fire departments being scared of litigation, that if they say, I have 4 firefighters instead of 10, they're going to be litigated. And this is one thing. We had a conversation 2-3 weeks back with this operation that sits at President's, Operation Vulindlela, that tries to deal with some of these issues. I was with you, Pam, in Stellenbosch, where we were saying that the data, eventually, the ideal scenario is that we must get to a point where the data of how many firefighters are there, it should be common knowledge. It can't be a secret forever. The same way you would know that there's no police van in this police station and that 100 people were murdered linked to this police station. So and so, you understand? So we need to evolve fire departments gradually and local authorities to a point where sharing public information becomes natural. Because these are public resources funded by public tax. So, but we know that fire departments are not there yet, but we need to nudge them to get to a point where they are free to share information. Lloyd should be able to say, yeah, as he was speaking, should have said, I'm from Chief Albert Luturi, I have 20 firefighters. And ideally, in terms of sons, I'm supposed to have 38. You know, so that when Diane sits here and she says, who can I support? She already knows that maybe I must support Lloyd to close the gaps that he's facing. But until we open up and we are transparent and deal with these issues transparently, there will always be this big gap and the deficit of trust. But anyway, the intention was for me just to wrap it. I don't know if you want to say something. I know there are no other questions, so we can do whatever Marius wants to do.
I just want to quickly add, because all of that comes down to the reason why also Santam, OMI have come together to create the Supporting Fire Services NPC, which we're just getting off the ground now, and it's to do exactly that. How do we come together and help make these things happen, capacitate, etc., ultimately for it to be sustainable in the long run as well. So not just to, I guess, throw money at the problem, but how do we solve the underlying issues as well. So excited to get that going also.
Yes. Yeah, and I mean, there's a lot that can be done with collaboration. And it can be done more quickly in some instances. I mean, let's talk about firefighting foam. I know sitting here now that most, because I speak to these metros, and I mean, all of them, I can speak to all the chiefs, all of them, the whole country. I know that they will, in some instances, have money, but the process to buy takes forever. To a point where if this Galaga estate is on fire, the money to buy foam is there, but the process takes 24 months to get to foam being delivered. You understand? And if you collaborate, these other partners can buy foam off the shelf. On Monday, we make a decision. On Wednesday, your foam is delivered. When you have a fire on Saturday, you fight it with resources. So that's how collaboration can help. And we have lots of examples where we will deliver foam on Monday. Saturday, the fire chief calls me to say, hey, Amos, we had a huge tanker fire and that foam. Then the question is, if that foam was not there. So it's not always a money problem. There's also a process problem that fire departments are grappling with, where things take long and so on. So partners have better processes, much more robust supply chain processes to can get things done. So the initiative that Deanne is talking about is something that we obviously going to be launching soon because we're collaborating as OMI and Holland. And we have raised substantial amounts of funds to try and start shifting the needle and tackling some of these issues in a collaborative way. So at the end of it, it's still about collaboration. Not displacing, but collaborating to support, to make sure that fire departments can tackle the risks that they're supposed to tackle. Because when all is said and done, when their resources shrink and their capacity gets weakened, we feel it the most as insurers. Because we must underwriting risks in these spaces. Sometimes with the assumption that there's capacity, and you find that the capacity is not there. So collaboration is critical, and I'm saying it, we work very well with City of Tshwane as Santam. I know you work with them, and others may be working with them, but we want to encourage other cities as well to take up collaboration as a way of creating an opportunity to force multiply and leverage resources and skills that ordinarily you would not have access to. But in a manner that, at the end of it all, helps you become more robust as a system to tackle the risks that you face. So that is it from me. I think that was my way of wrapping. I see you have things that you want to do there, so let me leave it at that. Unless if there are other questions, did I touch a nerve? So we're fine. We should be good. Marius, thank you.
Thank you very much. Carl will be doing the thanking, but we do ask all our presenters just to come to the front so we can give you a little bread bag to say thank you with.
Okay, I think Marius, before that, let's just get that wrap up. Yeah, I was assigned with the task to say hello and goodbye to you guys. But before that, I would just like to say thank you from FPASA. We had a nice turn up here. I would have liked for more interaction, but that's a lesson learned for next year. So we're going to start asking you to put down your questions this year for next year. Okay. And then again, I would like to say thank you to the MC. You did a remarkable job. You actually became one of the speakers as well. And then a special thanks goes to all the speakers today. You were incredible. We've learned a lot, and we can only move forward together. Thank you. And now our speakers can come to the front to receive a token of our appreciation. Thank you. Oh, and let's not forget the big guys, no? The guys that made this all possible, our sponsors, SafeQuip and Spell Doctor. I apologize, guys.
Can the people now come?
Yes.
Thank you. Yeah, please, yeah, if you don't mind joining us here, one or two little photos. much, everybody. You've been a kind audience. We really appreciate it. Please take a bit of time since we're early. Go through the exhibition side if you like, or just start the collaboration discussions. Thank you.